Hello, this is the U.S. mission to the UN, Richard Mills, checking to make sure I can.
Okay, the host is me.
Hi, Richard. Hi. I'm from Bosnia. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Hello, hello. This is also Einar Rystad from the Norwegian mission. I'm just testing sound and camera. I don't know if you can see me and hear me. Thank you.
Hello, this is Marina Ivanovic from the Serbian mission. I hope you can hear me. Good.
Hello, this is Matthias from the German mission. I hope everybody can hear me.
Hi, this is Sonia from the UK mission. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. This is Chirac from French mission. I can hear everyone that has spoken so far.
Good afternoon.
Hello, this is Hai Anh from Vietnam mission. I hope everyone can hear me.
Vasily, we don't hear you.
Vasily Alexeyevich, we don't hear you.
I'm switched on. Now you should hear me now, right? Okay, we are ready to start. We are in 2 o'clock as we announced. So if you allow me, we will start. We will be regulating the mics of the speakers, so not to make. Кого нет? I see some of our invitees absent from the screen. Maybe we'll give them just a minute to reappear on the VTC. Dear colleagues, the Arria-Formula meeting of the members of the Security Council is called to order. Thank you for participating in today's event. I want to make an announcement that the meeting will have simultaneous interpretation from English to Serbian and from Serbian to English, and I'm sure that our Croatian and Bosniak speakers will understand that as well. In order to listen to English, please find the icon interpretation in the sidebar at the bottom of your Zoom window and choose English in the drop-off menu. I will make a short presentation before I give the floor to today's speakers who were invited. This year marks the 25th anniversary since the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina has been signed. The Dayton Peace Agreement, with its 11 annexes, represents a complex and unique architecture for maintenance of regional peace and security. It was hard won, but it brought to an end the most brutal conflict in Europe since the Second World War, conflict that claimed more than 100,000 lives and caused more than 2 million people to flee their homes. It is hard to overestimate the importance of the 1995 Dayton Comprehensive Agreements. Their consistent implementation both put an end to Bosnian conflict and made it possible to achieve tangible results in reconciliation, the post-war restoration, and development of the decentralized Bosnia and Herzegovina. 25 years after the agreement was reached, the Dayton Accords remain the most important documents for Bosnia and Herzegovina, regulating the spheres of its political, economic, and social life. Russia, is one of the Dayton's guarantors, fully supports the basic principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, equality of all the three constituent peoples and the two entities with wide powers. On the 25th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement, we call on our partners in the UN Security Council to speak out in favor of these provisions. The accords that were signed in 1995 have a fundamental significance for Bosnia and Herzegovina and maintain their relevance in full. The balance of interests of the three peoples, which is envisaged in the document, is effective enough, provided that it is strictly adhered to. Attempts to undermine this architecture is fraught with very serious consequences, not only for Bosnia and Herzegovina, but for the entire Balkan region. We invited representatives of the three main political parties who can speak on behalf of the three constituent peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Unfortunately, the representative of one political party, Mr. Bakir Izetbegovic, decided not to attend this meeting in person, but we are glad that in the end he engaged in the discussion by sending his letter to us, to the Security Council members, and to the press. We circulated the letter beforehand, and you all had enough time to read and study it. Among other things, he pointed out that we should have invited the BiH presidency. Let me assure you that we had no intent to devalue the presidency. The Arria-Formula meetings are informal events where one can invite unofficial persons, parliamentarians, representatives of civil society, even opposition leaders. Prominent leaders whom we purposely invited today cannot make interventions at official meetings of the Security Council. But we want their voices to be heard, as they, being leaders of main political parties, represent the voice of the civil society. And we are sure that the Security Council deliberations today will benefit from listening to them. Also, at the request of the several Security Council members, we have invited High Representative Mr. Valentin Inzko to take part in today's meeting. We have listened to his briefing on November 5th this year, but it is our hope that this Arria-Formula meeting will differ from regular meetings of the Security Council. We count on a constructive and engaged dialogue. We expect that today's meeting will demonstrate that the Dayton Peace Agreement remains the bedrock of a stable, peaceful, and modern Bosnia and Herzegovina that is developing steadily in the interests of all its peoples and citizens. And now I would like to give the floor to High Representative Valentin Inzko. Valentin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador Vasily Alexeyevich. Thank you very much for the invitation to this informal meeting. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to all guarantors and those who have been present in Dayton, to 25 years of peace. As you know, I come from the country of Austria, and between World War I and World War II, we had only 20 years of peace, 20 years of peace, and now we have 25 years of peace. Also, when we look at conflicts around the globe, from Middle East to elsewhere, peace is something that has to be cherished. But of course, peace is only the starting point. It is not the end, but it's a good basis to build upon it. Yeah. At the outset, I would like to express what Vasily Andreevich has already said, that this meeting has been not invited by to this meeting. The presidency was not invited, but representatives of the constituent people. My point is that also the others should be present because they are part of the constitution, part of the Dayton Constitution, the so-called others. And this is about 10% of population. I want to emphasize the point about the others also due to the fact that the decision of the European Court of Human Rights on minority members, Mr. Sejdic from the Roma community and Mr. Finci from the Jewish community, remains unimplemented for more than a decade, as well as other similar decisions pointing to discrimination. Actually, minority members, or if you are born in the wrong part of the country, for example, the Serbs of Sarajevo, are excluded from certain functions now for 25 years. This is a brutal discrimination of some 10% of the population for 25 years. This too is an anniversary, although a sad one. An anniversary of discrimination, yeah. A living example, I'm sorry, Sven, is His Excellency the Ambassador of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Sven Alkalai, who cannot run for many, many state functions only because he belongs to the community of the Sephardic Jews of Bosnia and Herzegovina, who live in Sarajevo for some 500 years. Let me also reiterate that according to Dayton, I'm bound to formally report to the UN Security Council, and I have recently submitted the 24th regular report to the Council on the 5th of November. I want to be on record that today's informal meeting does not represent a part of my Dayton reporting obligation. In any case, as a final authority in the theater, according to the Dayton Peace Agreement, let me in short elaborate my views about BIH, many of them formally reported to the UN Security Council on previous occasions. The fact that Dayton and the Constitution have been twisted by all parties to fit their political goals remains, unfortunately, a concern. The Constitution constitutes the only set of rules that should apply to all and upon which Bosnia and Herzegovina should build its future. The different readings of the Dayton Treaty that political parties have, some of them, should not hide the fact that there is only one peace agreement which applies to all, and that the Constitution must be respected in all its aspects. Until it's amended, this still includes the BIH Constitutional Court in its current composition, whose decisions are final and binding. The Constitution also includes a clause that enables the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina to assume additional responsibilities to defend its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence that enables BIH to fulfill its international obligation. A clause that obliges the entities to comply with the decisions of the BIH institutions. It includes furthermore a clause that acknowledges that Bosnia and Herzegovina has existed as a recognized state since 1992 in its current borders, when it was admitted to the United Nations on May 22, 92, by a unanimous decision of the General Assembly, together with Slovenia and Croatia, and that internal structure was modified only later in 95 to make it consist of two entities. From the standpoint of my mandate, one of the main problems for peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina represents the policy of some centrifugal political forces in the country, aiming to undermine or weaken the achievements of Dayton and force changes to the existing arrangement. The results of such unilateral policies are frequently blockages at state level, legislative process, and de facto blockages of state institutions, although through the non-increase, sometimes also through the non-increase of the state budget for now almost 7 years. On the other side, these political forces have captured some of the state institutions, causing their functional deficiency, like the HGPC, the High Judicial Council. The trend that has started at the level has over the recent years spilled over to the Federation. And as an example, in the Federation, we have, after 2 years, not a new government. It has not been formed, and also the Federation president continues to block the appointments of judges to the Federation Constitutional Court. Altogether, we have 9 judges in the Constitutional Court, but 4 are not being appointed. As reported on many occasions, negative, divisive, secessionist rhetoric became almost a constant. Such rhetoric creates mistrust among the 3 constituent people and others, and prevents constructive compromises that can move the country forward. Yesterday, for example, the chairman of the BIH presidency, ahead of the meeting today, stated again publicly that no one can stop integration of Serbia and Srpska, and that 2 Serb states exist in this area. 2 Serb states exist in this area. Glorification of convicted war criminals, also by our 2 guests and their political parties, is not a way to build trust and reconciliation as a basis for lasting peace and stability. As an example, the erection of the plaque to the convicted war criminal Radovan Karadzic on the student dormitory, or welcoming events to convicted war criminals, oppose European values and human decency. The denial of the genocide in Srebrenica also became part of a usual rhetoric and a part of wider effort to rewrite history. Ladies and gentlemen, 25 years after the Dayton Peace Agreement, we witness an extraordinary lobbying effort by certain nationalist party to abandon two Dayton instruments. One is a high representative and international European judges. They should be eliminated from the BIH Constitutional Court. The aim behind is to remove potential obstacles that can, in legal terms, stop the implementation of negative agendas, including the establishment of an additional entity and secession, for example. Both institutions have provided safeguards against attacks targeting the state and its institutions. And both institutions are original Dayton institutions. Both guarantee an equilibrium of forces. This is very important. Specifically, when it comes to the issue of European judges in the BIH Constitutional Court, their removal would facilitate political control to the centrifugal forces over the court. Eventually, the negative agendas could even be implemented with the assistance of the majority of the judges in the court. Indeed, the mandate of the international judges in the BIH Constitutional Court should one day come to an end. Absolutely, I fully agree. And I also agree with the EU commissioned report of Mr. Priebe, who clearly stated that it is premature to terminate the mandate of European judges in the BIH Constitutional Court. I want to be clear that some want to wrongly present the issue of international judges as a well-intended attempt to normalize BIH and to increase the country's sovereignty. However, in reality, the termination of their mandates would seriously endanger its sovereignty and possibly its territorial integrity. Isn't it rather the opposite? All party leaders are speaking about rule of law, and all party leaders speak about necessity to come even closer to European values and European standards. I think personally it is wonderful that we have in one BIH institution, the Constitutional Court of BIH, already this close cooperation between European and BIH judges. We should cherish rather than undermine this fact. Mr. Chairman, Vasil Alexievich, the OHR is also perceived as an obstacle, and this is the main reason why my office and me personally are being continuously criticized, sometimes in the most brutal terms. I would like to remind of the 5 objectives and 2 conditions for the closure of my office that were set more than a decade ago as a commitment of domestic actors. Regrettably, so far, some political leaders have showed very little political will, in particularly those BIH politicians advocating for the closure of my office to implement the 5+2 conditionality. It would be so simple. Just implement the conditionality and then the closure would come. Without going into details, Republika Srpska opposes to implement the state property. This is the first agenda item. The state property condition in line with the decisions of the BIH Constitutional Court in 2012. The decision simply states the obvious, that state property belongs to the state, but should be distributed by law between levels of government. On prospective defense property, Republika Srpska refuses to register the prospective defense property on the territory of the Republika Srpska to the name of the BIH Ministry of Defense, of the State Ministry of Defense. The property that BIH presidency had determined that the BIH armed forces need to own. To be clear, the defense property should not be registered to the Federation, but to the state, to the Ministry of Defense, where Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs are represented. On the rule of law and fiscal sustainability, I can briefly say that we see serious backtracking in both areas in comparison with 2008, when the 5+2 conditionality has been set. The functioning of the judicial institutions at all levels is seriously hindered as they are being undermined by political interference. The international community, including the EU, acknowledges the lack of rule of law and the fight against corruption being one of the key problems in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And just today, a few hours ago, Johann Sattler, the EU-EUSR special representative in Sarajevo, organized a fantastic EU conference devoted to rule of law under the title Right to Justice, Pravo na Pravdu. Believe me, dear colleagues, it is not anymore jobs or a better life only. It's about justice, or better, the lack of justice that young, gifted people are living. So it was overwhelming when Johann Sattler introduced such a young person, the Minister of Justice of Austria, to this conference. Alma Zadic participated also. Alma Zadic, a graduate of Piacenza, Columbia University, and Vienna universities, a refugee child from Bosnia and Herzegovina. With regard to the fiscal stability, there are serious issues with the functioning of the Fiscal Council, redistribution of indirect taxes, etc. And there is Birchko, where the progress is good. So these are the 5 agenda items for closure, very straightforward. But allow me now to move to the so-called second condition, a positive assessment of the situation in BiH, based on full compliance with the Dayton Peace Agreement. The second condition is very important. Once the 5 objectives are met, I plan to undergo a thorough examination of the annexes to the agreement and the implementation thereof. The irreversibility of the steps taken in the implementation of and the sustainability of the institutions created pursuant to annexes to the Dayton Agreement shall be a key factor in this assessment. In light of some secessionist rhetoric heard over the last years, a particular emphasis will be put on the provisions relating to BiH sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence that constitute the cornerstone of Dayton. But it is attacks against the constitutional order, including persistent attacks on key state institutions and constitutional responsibilities of the state, that have marred progress over the last decade, with some political parties trying to impose their own reading of the Constitution and rejecting decisions of bodies in charge for interpreting it. As a result, Annex 4 will be at the heart of my assessment, and I shall continue to pay particular attention to issues like the compliance with decisions of the Constitutional Court, the ability of the institutions to perform their constitutional and legal responsibilities, the respect of BiH competences, etc. Also the compliance with provisions concerning the composition, jurisdiction, and independence of the Constitutional Court and all judges sitting in that court. This is about what I wanted to say, and maybe I should say also at the end that ladies and gentlemen, at the conclusion, I would like to thank also Mr. Dodik sincerely for his year-long support and assistance in the implementation of the Dayton Peace Agreement in the first decade after Dayton. He was a really reliable partner, and everybody was applauding him, thanking him, and without his assistance in this first decade after Dayton, many of the institutions, many of the laws, many agencies could not have been created. His effort and support has been a key in building state-level institutions in line with the BiH Constitution, Annex 4 to the Peace Agreement. As a reminder, in this annex, in Article 3(5)(a), the Constitution states, additional state institutions may be established as necessary to carry out for Bosnia and Herzegovina such additional responsibilities. But above all, I would like to welcome a forward-looking reconciliatory statement by the BiH presidency, also signed by Mr. Dodik, adopted on the 21st of November, the 25th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement, signed by the members of the state presidency, as I said, Dodik, Jaferovic, and Komšić. Let the statement represent a fresh start in terms of a new, more positive rhetoric in the country that will be followed by a new compromise-oriented policies free of blockages and blackmailing. This is essential for the country to be able to successfully address its own economic, social, and rule of law related matters, on top of regional and global problems like the migration issue or the COVID-19 crisis, which have disclosed its dysfunctionality and dependence on international assistance. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us in the international community have invested, from the perspective of our respective mandates, a tremendous amount of our attention, of our efforts, of our political capital and financial assistance. We are therefore entitled to demand better governance, so well deserved by the citizens of the country. And what we are doing only in the interest of the citizens of the country. Thank you very much, Vasily Alexeyevich.
Спасибо, господин Инце. Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Ince for his statement, and now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Dragan Čović, Chair of the Croatian Democratic Union of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Poštovani gospodine predsjedatelju,
Dear Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, representatives of the member states of the United Nations Security Council, esteemed guests, dear friends. It is my great pleasure to be participating in this Arria-Formula meeting of the United Nations Security Council. This meeting is dedicated to a topic that is of existential importance for our homeland, Bosnia and Herzegovina, its citizens of all ethnic backgrounds, its constituent peoples, Croats, Bosniaks and Serbs, as constitution makers and bearers of sovereignty. Hence, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation to the presiding country that has initiated and organized today's discussion. The benefits of having such a discussion are very well summarized and formulated in the concept note prepared on the occasion of this meeting, which complements the presiding country's dedicated effort, as well as deep background knowledge and understanding of all specific issues and challenges encountered in the implementation of the Dayton Peace Accords in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Among other things, it is noted that the Dayton Peace Agreement has laid the basic principles of Bosnia and Herzegovina's functioning, comprising the respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country, provisions stipulating broad authority of the two constituent entities, Republika Srpska and the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and equality of the three constituent peoples, Bosniaks, Serbs, and Croats. The Dayton has defined the framework to find solutions related to inter-ethnic conflict settlement through dialogue of the parties on the basis of equality and mutual respect, compromise, and consensus. The topic is also relevant in the context of the regional relations and stability and beyond. Various techniques and models of post-conflict stabilization, peace building, and the functioning of liberal, democratic, multinational federation have been tested in Bosnia and Herzegovina for a long time now. The success of different techniques and tools used may have far-reaching consequences for similar international engagements in the future around the world. Hence, the practical commitment and action of this body being the highest in the hierarchy of the United Nations system. For this reason, a discussion on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the General Framework Peace Agreement in Bosnia and Herzegovina is more than welcome as an opportunity to reflect at this high level on its key achievements. We do so with the benefit of time and perspective at a point when it may be advisable to start exploring more creative and innovative methods that can encourage the internal stabilization of relations and the overall development of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The key modality of your acquaintance so far with the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina are the developments related to the implementation of the Dayton Peace Accords has been through the quarterly reports of the High Representative. The most recent one was presented by Mr. Valentin Inzko not long ago. Unfortunately, all relevant political representatives in Bosnia and Herzegovina find that, as a rule, his reports, at least so far, have been significantly deficient and superficial in some parts. But what is most worrying is that they have not presented a complete picture of the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Without a complete picture, there can be no real understanding of the problems and consequently no adequate approach of the international community and this esteemed body to what we recognize as a common interest, those being functional democracy and maturation and a self-sustaining European perspective of B&H. The Dayton Peace Agreement is being undermined by a plethora of challenges, and I like to list only some of the issues that, for reasons unknown to us, were not referenced to in Mr. Inzko's set reports, and we deem them to deserve your attention. And those include the unlawful qualification of the Croatian people as a minority, which is unconstitutional and contrary to the agreement, Dayton Peace Agreement, which equally positions the three constituent peoples as equal social and political entities. The state Bosnia and Herzegovina is a symmetrical multinational federation that functions on the basis of recognition on full equality of the three constituent peoples, regardless of demographic trends and variations in their numbers throughout the territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, the insistence on the constitutional framework of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is based on the equality of the three constituent peoples, is not advocating for a third entity, which some often impute unjustifiably and unfoundedly to Croats in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Too often, a legitimate insistence on law and the constitution is declared nationalist action, and such labeling should be ended. Secondly, the High Representative's report makes no reference whatsoever to the calls of Bosniak parties to impose political representatives on behalf of Croats at lower levels of governance. Statements of Bosniak political parties announcing violations of the Dayton Peace Agreement to the detriment of Croats in the upcoming general elections in 2022. Illegal and illegitimate appointments to the Central Electoral Commission of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Number 5, ignoring the illegitimacy of a member of the BNH presidency. 6, the silence as to the politics of the major Bosniak political party, the SDA, which relativizes and impedes the implementation of the agreement on the reform and amendments to the BNH Electoral Act and the policies of hatred towards Croats and obstructing the rights of the constituent peoples guaranteed by the Constitution, etc., etc. Since Article 2 of the Annex 10 to the Dayton Peace Accords commands that the High Representative should monitor the implementation of the peace agreement, act impartially during his tenure, and respect the democratically expressed views of all constituent peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina, our deep concern is understandable. In contrast, with this address, we have a unique opportunity to take a constructive and critical stance as to all factual shortcomings in the implementation of the Dayton Agreement. It is necessary to gain insight into the agreement's unrealized potential, which is necessary to draw from for the country to progress on its path to democratic development and towards full autonomy, self-sustainability, and a European future. However, one should never lose sight of the fact that is crucial for the stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the region alike. The fact being that Bosnia and Herzegovina is founded on the principle of equality of the three constituent peoples, namely Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, who collectively account for over 97% of BNH citizens. In addition, the constituency of the peoples is a determinant that our Constitutional Court singled out back in 2000 as the fundamental and overriding constitutional principle. This principle is therefore both the foundation and roof of the structure that we seek to organize and arrange in a way that suits the three indigenous peoples who have conjointly built it over centuries. I find the view that the current and actually relevant ethnic issues and relations will fade away and disappear if they are simply ignored or aggressively eliminated from the public discourse to be a political illusion that is utterly wrong. Instead, we witness, as a result, structural disruptions and inability to implement the necessary constitutional and political reforms. One of the most pressing concerns is the amended Electoral Act, which undermines the equality and balance in the system of the shared participation of the three peoples in government. Moreover, some of the arrangements imposed by the High Representatives created new problems, which then had to be addressed by the European Court of Human Rights. And the court subsequently ordered, for example, that the discriminatory provisions on the elections in the city of Mostar be rectified, the city I myself come from, which were, believe it or not, imposed by the Office of the High Representative itself, the OHR. Most of the problems, especially for the Croatian people, were caused by the hastily imposed amendments to the Electoral Act, which resulted in two governments of the Federation of BNH, known initially as the Croat Bosniak entity, having been constituted without the representatives of Croats as a constituent and equal people as guaranteed by the Constitution. This has directly jeopardized its sovereign constitutional and political right to elect political representatives and guaranteed participation in the formation of the entity-level government and state-level presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The elections rigging we witnessed 3 times so far resulted in unconstitutional and undemocratic imposition of the current member of the BNH presidency. I fully understand the positive intentions of the international community, which seeks to facilitate decision-making by the legislative and executive branches, and thus expedite the institutional development and progress of Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, experience is a witness that tells that without ownership, internal legitimacy, consensus, and respect for the rights of each of the peoples to legitimate political choice and representation, our common goals are not achievable. The federal system of power sharing must not be seen as an obstacle to state building, as it puts the international community in a biased position in support of a one-sided Unitarian concept affirmed by Sarajevo-based Bosniak political entities. The neglect of the collective equality of the 3 peoples and their constituency only encourages the outvoting attempts that are illegitimate under the Constitution and the peace agreement. This has resulted in a fragmented political landscape in Bosnia and Herzegovina, an atmosphere of mistrust among the political representatives of the 3 constituent peoples, which often causes a functional impasse in institutions and setbacks in the implementation of key reforms. Only when all 3 constituent peoples and all citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina feel safe, confident, and without concerns that their identity and political rights may not be respected and recognized, will the focus shift from national political platforms to socio-economic issues. In order to achieve this, a key prerequisite to be ensured without any further delay is the reform of the Electoral Act well before the 2022 general elections. At the same time, any reform of the Electoral Act must not be an end in itself, but the first important step on the country's path to political stabilization. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that my country is going through yet another period of major trials. I'm deeply convinced that no constituent people in Bosnia and Herzegovina can be either happy or prosperous if the other 2 constituent peoples are not, including all our citizens. In that sense, I believe that we, within Bosnia and Herzegovina, must make the necessary step forward and adopt over the next 6 months amendments to the electoral legislation in compliance and in conformity with the decisions of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina. As before, we expect the understanding and support of the international community in resolving this issue, which is vital for further democratization and our full integration into the European Union. All the best, thank you, and stay safe.
I thank Mr. Chiric for his statement. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Milorad Dodik, Chair of the Alliance for Independent Social Democrats. Mr. Dodik, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you very much, Ambassador Nebezia, for this opportunity to address you and the member states of the Security Council. It is my great pleasure that you have made it possible for everyone to discuss the Dayton Peace Accords and the 25th anniversary, but also to discuss the future of its implementation. The coronavirus has affected the entire world, and it has made our communication impossible in direct fashion. But in this way, all of us know very well that the Dayton Peace Agreement is qualified as one of the major international documents after the Second World War. And indeed, not much evidence is required there. There is no mistake in the agreement itself, but the way in which the implementation is understood. Richard Holbrooke said, one of the authors of the Dayton Peace Accords, the man who made sure that we have a text of the treaty and that it should be amended. The Vienna Convention on International Treaties stipulates that international treaties are implemented, are to be implemented, not interpreted. What I want to say is that the basic stance of the Dayton Agreement is that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country that is composed of 2 entities and 3 constituent peoples. And this permeates all its parts and annexes and articles. So the formation of Bosnia and Herzegovina on the basis of political agreement stopped the war, and that was brought about by the Dayton Peace Agreement, peace being the key word. Peace being the key word all of the time, because peace was established and there were no more conflicts between and among ethnic communities. In particular, over the past decades, we've had no conflicts whatsoever. Therefore, Bosnia and Herzegovina is a complex state creation. And it reflected the organization of the United States of America, and through the Dayton Peace Accords, it reflected what the United States of America did. There is one important article which was almost copy-pasted from the Constitution of the USA. Only those competencies that are expressly vested with Bosnia and Herzegovina shall be those of Bosnia and Herzegovina. All other functions are vested with the entities. And I trust that Mr. Rinsko has read the article and should be aware of it, but he's not actually there to interpret the Constitution. He, without any authorization, interfered in the interpretation of many things in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This actually refers to the past 10 years, but also this refers to all other high representatives who have actually changed the character of the Dayton Peace Accords, and instead of interpreting it in line with the Vienna Treaty, they interpreted it by introducing the so-called spirit of the Dayton, and hence they introduced many changes. Paddy Ashdown was criminal and unjust in his interpretation, who readily breached the agreement. And in his book, he wrote that his role was to end the Dayton Peace Agreement and create a new Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was never the authority. It has never been the authority of a high representative. It was a lie that was promoted by his other successor, including Mr. Insko, claiming and asserting that they are there to create a novel Bosnia and Herzegovina outside of the Dayton Peace Agreement. The notorious High Representative was introduced by way of the Annex 10 to the Dayton Peace Agreement, governing the civil implementation of the Accords. Without any authority, and we have a Peace Implementation Council, and there is no mention or reference to it anyway. I understand the powerful states and countries, but actually the Annex 10 stipulates that the High Representative should monitor and assist and help, not impose. But an unelected foreign official all of a sudden appeared with a mandate on the basis of the Annex 10 signed by the parties being the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Croatia, my Republika Srpska, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and provisional imaginary Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the annex, it is said that the High Representatives is required to provide reports to the parties, signatory, and other international institutions. Never has a High Representative submitted a report to the Republika Srpska. What I'm saying is that the Security Council, the United Nations, or any international level has not introduced the High Representatives. That function was introduced by Annex 10. If we take stock today and look at what's happening, out of the 5 part signatories, Serbia wants to end the High Representatives. Croatia wants to end it. Republika Srpska wants him to disappear. The Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, half of the federation wants the High Representative to leave. At the joint level, 2/3 of the political representatives in Bosnia and Herzegovina wants him gone. And he's still, even here, and I would be embarrassed if I were him, continues to manipulate the Security Council, as he's been doing quite successfully for quite some time. He's telling things that are not true. He's saying, things expecting to be patted on his shoulders from Sarajevo. And without, there are certain proceeds and benefits he gets from that. Valentin Inzko, the High Representative, is saying and has said before things on the basis on which we conclude that he hates Serbs. He's either paid for saying those things or he's quite convinced that's right. I'm saying this today because I think that we can actually speak in a dignified fashion about the Dayton Peace Accords. Serbia and Croatia are the guarantors, and they are not members of the Peace Implementation Council. And the Peace Implementation Council should, as a rule, decide through a consensus. And lately, it's been making decisions without such consensus. And I'm really glad to see Mr. Inzko, who's been abusing the stage. And he is speaking on behalf of one people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Bosniak people, Muslims. He's not here. He's not speaking on behalf of the citizens. He's not speaking on behalf of the Dayton Agreement. In order for everyone to see your smile and smirk, Mr. Inzko, let me tell you one thing. Mr. Izetbegovic said in his letter that the members of the presidency should be here, and you've said the same thing. Do you know that I'm a member of the presidency? I'm the presiding member. Do you think I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the presidency? Let me tell you this. As the presiding member of the presidency, I have never received a request for the presidency to express their views on this. Mr. Inzko, we do not have a stance of the presidency. And Mr. Inzko, you are not the person to interpret what the presidency should be doing. I'm there to do that, not you lying here before this high body. This is yet another evidence that Mr. Inzko is pursuing the same agenda as Bosniaks from Sarajevo. Hence, I wonder why we have Mr. Alcalay here on behalf of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Why is he here? Do you, Your Excellencies, member states of the Security Council, have other missions during the sessions of the Security Council as they please? Mr. Alcalay has never consulted with anyone, and he was supposed to consult with the presidency because it is the presidency that's responsible for the foreign policy, not Mr. Alcalay. And it cannot be Mr. Alcalay who keeps going to the State Department and other bodies promoting this or that policy. While preparing for his address here, he has never consulted, he's never prepared a speech, and I guess he'll be speaking on behalf of Željko Komšić and Bakir Izetbegovic. So Mr. Alcalay does not have any approval of what he's going to say here, his statement and address, and what he's going to say, if he's going to say anything, will be strictly private. In any case, this in itself and of itself speaks of the fact that Mr. Inzko is trying to manipulate the presidency, and this actually shows his desire to decide on everything. You know very well, just as I do, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Inzko can do nothing beyond the Annex 10. There is also another annex, Annex 2, which governs the military aspects of the Accords, and the I4 commander was responsible for interpreting that annex, not the High Representative. The High Representative cannot interpret the Constitution, although he's done so doing it today without any authority and authorization. He has unlawful authority, and he's an unelected official. He's manipulated the Security Council yet again. Now he's yet again interpreting the Constitution and the Constitutional Court. Even the arrogant Paddy Ashdow did not dare touching the very substance of the Constitution, meddle with it, let alone create the Constitutional Court. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, today there is a lot of evidence showing that the High Representative and OHR have imposed decisions of the Constitutional Court. The three the three Bosniaks and two foreign judges, so 5 out of 9, keep outvoting domestic judges. Every time they come to Bosnia and Herzegovina for adjudication, they meet Mr. Inzko and design their decisions. In that sense, I have one question for you. Who's Mr. Priebe? Did any body of Bosnia and Herzegovina seek his report? Mr. Inzko, do you really think that we are a lower species because you keep referred to him and other entities? You're imposing things again. Also, there is a lot of evidence on the unlawful and criminal actions of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And Mr. Inzko has made similar claims today. He's saying that the state property allegedly belongs to the joint level. The Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina has Article 3.3, which is clear, stipulating that Bosnia and Herzegovina is composed of the 2 entities, Republika Srpska and the Federation, and 3 constituent peoples. In other provisions, the article stipulates, as I've just said, that all functions, all competencies that are not expressly vested with the state are vested with the entities. And Mr. Inzko is now referring to the property. There is no mention in the Constitution whatsoever of any property. Mr. Inzko is required to implement the Dayton Agreement, not breach or violate the Constitution. In this case as well, he's trying to create decisions by interpreting certain provisions of the Constitution and to ban investments in the area of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's the person that hinders and impedes the development of Bosnia and Herzegovina and investments at the time when we need the most, which is right now. So, reflecting on what Mr. Inzko has said about the integration of Republika Srpska and Serbia, I belong to the Serbian people and I'm proud of it. The Serbian people accepted the Dayton Agreement, believing that the international community and representatives will be fair. But we have come to understand it is not so. My Serbian people is small in the Balkans. We have never been conquerors, and we have never conquered other countries outside of the territory where we live. In the last century, my people were under sanctions for 18 years, and for 6 years, it had to fight wars that were imposed, and 16% of our population vanished during the 2 wars. I cherish the remembrance of my predecessors or ancestors. Sorry, a lot of my family members actually participated in the wars, and we fought for the victorious alliance. The war in Bosnia and Herzegovina was fought because someone imposed the dissolution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we Serbs believe that we should preserve it. Our people is not allowed to exercise its freedom. My Serbian people is not allowed to have the same and equal rights as other peoples in the region. And when I say that, I want someone to explain to me how it is impossible that Albanians in Kosovo are given the right to a state, and we in the Republika Srpska are not allowed to have a state. Many get frustrated, those who are big and powerful. And instead of being explained, we get punished. And this is what Mr. Inzko wants. He wants a new punishment. We are tired of such behavior. We are tired of promises and impositions by foreign officials. Mr. Inzko does not have any support at the local level. Mr. Čović kindly and in good manners explained it, but the 2 peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina who constitute a majority are against him, and they shared one common goal, to preserve peace and freedom and the rights, Mr. Insko. Please stop this monster who's trying to impose solutions yet again, contrary to the Dayton, because Insko will dissolve not just the Dayton Peace Agreement, but Bosnia and Herzegovina. In this way, I'm afraid we cannot go further with this way. Make it possible for us in Bosnia and Herzegovina to innovate, to come up with an agreement, to agree on what Bosnia and Herzegovina should like, not to have a foreign official who's ignorant, who's ill-intended, who's been working against the two constituent peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbs and Croats. He's not supported. The solutions he's proposing are not sustainable. He's having his small vendetta, he's revenging against Serbs and Croatians. We are going to reject every single measure he imposes. We are not going to accept it because they'll be against the Dayton Peace Agreement. Mr. Insko has nothing to do with the state property in Bosnia and Herzegovina, nothing. But he seeks to stop the development. He's prevented the construction of hydropower plants, airports, or at least he's trying to. And that cannot be explained. It's inexplicable. I know that some big powers stand behind his actions as they are. But we in Bosnia and Herzegovina, please let this be known, we are not going to gazette any single decision or edict imposed by Mr. Insko. Hence, they won't be implemented or executed. He breached all rights long time ago. And no matter whether this does not actually, no matter that this may not be appropriate for this level, and I really wanted to discuss this agreement at a high level, I need to say that, a large portion of the assistance for Bosnia and Herzegovina goes for the salaries and wages of foreign officials. So Mr. Insko is an unelected foreigner who's behaving as he is. Now, the 5+2 formula was made up. When Mr. Insko speaks about novel institutions, he's not saying on purpose, because you may not have the time, that only the parties signatory to the Dayton Agreement, that is the Constitution, can do that. This means that the parties in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Insko, Republika Srpska and the Federation, not you, you've got nothing to do with this. Why have you been breaching the international law? One day, we'll find a way to turn to a fair and just procedure and defend our rights. We do know that the world now supports an imaginary creation known as High Representative Valentin Insko currently. But we need to preserve peace. I am for Bosnia and Herzegovina as created by the Dayton Peace Accords with the two entities and three constituent peoples. I'm against Mr. Valentin Insko and the High Representative, and I believe that I have the right as a representative of one constituent people to seek other solutions. And this includes the right of the Republika Srpska to implement the documents of the United Nations, your organizations, and the Republika Srpska has the right to self-determination, right? You can't possibly claim that we do not have such right. Why some do have and we would not. So we are against the meddling of the High Representative. We want to seek to agree on the relations within the country, and we want to continue to function as a country that's composed of the two entities and three constituent peoples. If Mr. Insko continues acting as he has, I believe that we should seek an integration of Republika Srpska with the parent land, however acceptable or unacceptable it is. This will be our reaction to the action of the High Representative, Mr. Insko, and the international community to fleece us of the authority we rightly have. So these things are quite clear, and we have discussed them so far openly. Now, there is no constituency of the Serbs in the Federation. It's not respected. In 1991, 150,000 Serbs lived in Sarajevo. In that city, Mr. Insko, there are only 15 Serbs employed in different institutions. In the Federation, Serbian children do not learn Serbian language, except in Drvar and Glamoch with Serbian authorities. In the federation, not a single child inside of it, not a single child learns Serbian language. What equality, Mr. Insko, are you talking here? And the international community reflected in the figure of High Representative seeks to impose a civic state. No, we aren't going to do that. There is no authority to impose a civic state, not a national state. Bosnia and Herzegovina is composed of the 2 entities and 3 constituent peoples. We cannot possibly rearrange the entire organization and structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina simply because Mr. Insko likes it, or Bosniaks like it, and no one else likes it, because Mr. Insko has been working against 2 constituent peoples. And mind you, this is not a small number in our case. So the High Representative himself often criticizes only Republika Srpska. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 14th of September 2019, the ASDI, working under the auspices of Mr. Insko, issued a declaration saying that the entities and constituent people should be abolished and that Bosnia and Herzegovina should be created on a completely different principles. Have you ever heard Mr. Insko say anything about it? Because have you ever heard him say that this would constitute or amount to a violation of the Dayton Agreement? No, never. But he's always quite ready, to make a big statement before the Security Council. So the ASDI's declaration of the 14th September 2019 is a direct violation and breach of the Dayton Peace Agreement. And this declaration seeks further outvoting of Serbs and Croats. There is no place, there is no room for us, my people, and I believe Mr. Čović's people. There's no place, for us in such Bosnia and Herzegovina. I do not want to live in such Bosnia and Herzegovina. And Mr. Insko can keep telling you that there is a Dodik, somewhere there who keeps impeding things. So no, everything that's been disrupted so far has been disrupted by the High Representative. And if you could please send Mr. Insko home to enjoy the significance that he has received, earning on our troubles. I'm quite open to cooperation with your governments, with your people. And I need to say something else very important. The Hague Tribunal has ended its work. Serbs were sentenced to 1,100 years, Bosniaks 40-something years. That's not the that does not reflect the war here. Mr. Insko, you're not going to write the history in this way. That's not true. There is a man who killed Serbs in Srebrenica, and there are video records there. And Insko and his bosses from the RCDA see him as Mother Teresa. And every single Serb, even the Serbs who are being born right now, are considered evil, to be fleeced of any rights. I cannot allow that. We are for and committed to the European path, integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But, for this to happen, Dayton Peace Agreement must be observed. All other future solutions must be rooted in the Dayton Agreement. I believe that the substantial reform of the electoral legislation must be made, but not, it's not the reform that Insko is advocating for. This requires the visibility of the constituent peoples in the joint institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Without that, I think that will tread the path into the disappearance of Bosnia and Herzegovina. What I'm saying is believed to be heresy in some places, but I do not want to accept anything that's contrary to the interests of my people. I do not want to accept that Serbia and the Serbian people and Republika Srpska are being portrayed as satanic. We are here, we live in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Bosnia and Herzegovina can be good only without the High Representative. Without the 3 foreign judges of the Constitutional Court, we do not have sovereignty. We are a protectorate. And just imagine an average official such as Mr. Insko, being on the top. We cannot accept that. Do you know what he's going to do now? He's going to Sarajevo. He's sitting in Sarajevo now, and now he's going to write a number of decisions because of what's being told tonight. And, you know, he'll try to punish me and Mr. Čović, or maybe Republika Srpska and the Serbian people alone. I just pay attention, pay close attention. You know, over the next days, we are going to have one such decision. And this definitely speaks about the democratic capacity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. There is no democratic capacity there, you see. Over the 25 years, the OSCE and other international institutions found we had free and unimpeded and fair elections. So since 1996, we've had a number of local and general elections. They've been, as the OSCE and other international institutions, relevant ones, have found, they've been fair and free. And what does Mr. Rinsko have to do with it? Who is he to interpret the election? Who is he to comment on the composition of the Central Electoral Commission? Gentlemen, please read, just read. You don't need to trust my word. Just read what I'm saying to understand whether I'm correct or not. I'll accept all your suggestions. Just do not tell me that what's written is not true. Thank you very much for the time you've given me. And there is an attempt, obviously, to invoke the international community to impose certain things here. And there is another thing I'd like to emphasize, and I think I'm saying this on behalf of everyone. Bosnia-Herzegovina deserves peace as a free country composed of the two entities and three constituent peoples. Anything outside of that, beyond that, is a breach of and undermining of peace and stability. We in Republika Srpska do not have a war plan, but Mr. Rinsko, you're never going to prohibit on the basis of your claims that the state property belongs to the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina, us to do what we want to. That's not true. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll wrap up. Thank you very much for the time you've given me. I did not expect Mr. Rinsko to speak at the level he spoke tonight. Hence, some of my words I actually did not prepare, but I was driven by his insistent and persistent hatred towards Serbs. Just imagine the Patriarch of the Serbian Orthodox Church died a couple of days ago. There are many peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have not noticed, I have not heard that Mr. Rinsko offered his condolences. If he has, I'd like to thank him, but I have not noticed. He could have been more visible, actually. In any case, just imagine him not doing that. In any case, all the best to you and your families. I believe in the peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are not prepared to make any war moves, and we'll do our best to preserve Bosnia and Herzegovina as a country with the two entities and three constituent peoples. And if that's not possible, I'll fight for the path of freedom of Republika Srpska and its integration with whoever it wants to live. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Dodik for his statement. I think nobody can deny now that we have an open and frank dialogue. And now I'd like to give the floor to those members of the Security Council who would like to make a statement. And now I give the floor first to the permanent representative of the Dominican Republic. Jose, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Neblinza. We thank the delegation of the Russian Federation for convening this meeting to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. At the same time, we thank the briefers for the information provided. The new anniversary is being commemorated in the midst of a global health crisis. This important celebration should have repercussions on the unity of all sectors of society in order to face the pandemic and its collateral consequences. We recognize the achievements of the authorities and political leadership of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the consolidation of peace 25 years after the end of the conflict that cost the lives of over 100,000 people and displaced millions. However, there are still obstacles to the full implementation of the agreements and in the progress towards the consolidation of a solid rule of law. Among these obstacles are social insecurity, deficiency in the judicial system, negative rhetoric, and allegations of corruption in the public administration. This is an opportunity for political leadership under the technical, political, and economic auspices of the European Union should take up the challenge and join forces to understand the benefits of stability, development, and opportunities offered by the implementation of the General Framework Agreement for Peace. The authorities must remember that the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina awaits with vehemence its opportunity to sow its hopes in a soil where unity in ethnic, cultural, and religious diversity are guaranteed, where opportunities and stability are a reality for all sectors of society at the economic, social, and political levels. Mr. President, the Dominican Republic takes this opportunity to reiterate its recognition of the unity, territorial integrity, and sovereignty of Bosnia and Herzegovina. At the same time, it calls on the political leadership of Bosnia and Herzegovina to look objectively to the future. But to do so, it must get rid of the chains that have held it back in the past. The occasion calls for the implementation of measures and reforms that the President is demanding so that Bosnia and Herzegovina can become the country that its people dream of. That is why we invite the national leadership to break with antagonisms and political blockages, because in unity is the force and the ideal to move forward. In conclusion, we recognize the commitment of this Council to the cause of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So in this sense, we express our support to the Office of the High Representative, as we have done so far, hoping to celebrate in the not too distant future, the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina can enjoy a country of full stability, inclusion, and unity in ethnic and religious diversity. Thank you very much.
I thank Dominican Republic for its statement, and now I give the floor to the representative of Vietnam.
Thank you, Chair. Vietnam thanks Russia for organizing this important Arria meeting on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I would like to thank the briefers for their presentation. It is always useful to listen to the views of the concerned people, the people who have suffered in the past, implement the peace agreement and peace process at present, and will own their future. It helps us obtain additional information and see better and focus our work on what is needed on the ground and what is beneficiary to the people. Chair, the signing of the agreement on 14 December 1995 marked a crucial turning point for peace, security, and development in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the whole Balkans region. The violent conflict was brought to an end, and the people could finally look forward to building peaceful, stable, and prosperous society and life. In this regard, we would like to emphasize 3 main points. First, while notable progress has been made since the mid-1990s post-war environment, including Bosnia and Herzegovina becoming an upper middle income country, it is regrettable that peace and development so thirsted by the people for so long remains unstable. Cooperation between entities and communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina continue to face strenuous challenges. We call on all parties in Bosnia and Herzegovina to overcome their differences and enhance efforts aimed at constructive dialogue, trust, and confidence building, national reconciliation for political stability, socio-economic development through necessary reforms, and improve the livelihood of the people. Second, the Dayton Peace Agreement is a compromise. By nature of being a compromise, it is not perfect. Yet, As a staunch supporter of international law, we firmly believe that the Dayton Peace Agreement, being an international treaty, must be implemented fully. We therefore support all efforts that focus on the implementation of this agreement in an effective and sustainable way with the long-term interests of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina at heart. We encourage all parties to fully live up to their commitments and obligations under the peace agreement with due respect to the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the long-term interests of all communities in the countries. This will contribute greatly to peace, stability, and prosperity of their people and countries in the larger region. Third, throughout this process, the international communities and related parties can play an important supportive role by providing necessary assistance to Bosnia and Herzegovina by engaging in a constructive way, while always putting the long-term interests of the people, the communities, and the country first. In conclusion, in commemorating the 25th anniversary of Dayton Accords, let the spirit of peace and harmony prevail and guide all efforts. And thank you.
I thank Vietnam for its statement, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Germany. Günther, you have the floor.
Vasily, thank you very much. I was hoping that this area would create the opportunity for dialogue and exchange on the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have now listened to a very long monologue full of personal attacks against the High Representative. Let me just say, and I'm sure that many will share that, I do not think that this is how the Security Council should be discussing. We can do better. I have basically two remarks to make. The first message I have is a message on our commitment. And the second one is questions on the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I believe that the first one, our commitment, is important, having heard what I just heard. So let me say that 25 years after the signing of the peace agreement in Dayton, we clearly remain committed to a credible EU perspective for Bosnia and Herzegovina and all Western Balkan countries. And we continue to believe this is crucial for stability and prosperity in the region and beyond. Then, dear Valentin Inzko, we thank the High Representative for his work on the ground in creating peace and supporting reconciliation between the different parts of the Bosnian society. We maintain our full support to you and to your office. We welcome the work of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina and its international judges. We believe that their experience is essential in the setup of the court in line with the Dayton Agreement until there is a viable and sustainable alternative in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Verbal attacks and defamatory language against the court and its judges must not be tolerated. The future of Bosnia and Herzegovina is the road to the European Union. Reforms on a prosperous future are urgently needed. The 14 key priorities laid out by the European Commission last year in response to Bosnia and Herzegovina's membership application provide a clear roadmap. One last commitment: the Peace Implementation Council Steering Board and the Security Council have repeatedly expressed their commitment to Bosnia and Herzegovina's territorial integrity and to its structure as a single and sovereign state. We stand by this commitment. Against the backdrop of today's list of briefers and against the backdrop of how this discussion has been going so far, we would like to stress the importance of cooperation with the elected government representatives. Now, I said I have a message on our commitment, and I have questions on the future. On these questions, it is an alarming development, we believe, that young and well-educated people are frustrated and leaving the country in great numbers, looking for opportunities elsewhere. Recent studies show that as many as 71% of young people in the Western Balkans are considering to leave their countries. And these studies show that these young people point to deficits in the education, in health or social security systems, to a lack of merit-based recruitment, or to corruption. As a result, we see significant brain drain accelerated by the lack of good governance and of the political will to fight organized crime and nepotism. This, we believe, is highly detrimental to economic growth, innovation, and to building a stable and prosperous country. Political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina need to think about the future they want for their country and their people, and make the implementation of these reforms their top priority. We regret that even 25 years after the conflict, the country is still deeply divided along ethnic lines. We are very concerned about the divisive, negative rhetoric that deepens existing divisions and that makes reconciliation in Bosnia and Herzegovina increasingly difficult. And I think we have just seen some of that. We believe that all political actors should make reconciliation a top priority. We all remember this year we solemnly commemorated the 25th anniversary of the genocide in Srebrenica. Germany's federal president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, pointed out that remembering does not make us immune against wrongdoing, and that the evil spirits are appearing in a new guise today. This is also true for Germany. It's true in many places. The genocide in Srebrenica reminds us to be more vigilant in our daily lives and to take a more decisive stance against revisionism, nationalism, and all kinds of racism. It is unacceptable that convicted war criminals are glorified, and here I'm not speaking about Germany, but I'm speaking about Bosnia and Herzegovina. The recent adoption of the revised national war crimes strategy was a very important and positive step in the right direction. 25 years after Dayton, it's high time for Bosnia and Herzegovina to find new ways of coping with its past and coming to genuine reconciliation between its peoples. Let me make a remark on elections. We welcome that the local elections on the 15th of November were held in a peaceful manner. We now hope for successful elections in Mostar on the 20th of December. This is an important date. It's the first local election in the city in 12 years. It's clear the election environment should be further improved. The reform of the election law is an urgent issue, in particular with regard to the implementation of the Sejdic-Finci ruling of the European Court of Human Rights. It is high time that all citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina can equally take part in political life of the country. Let me conclude by saying Bosnia and Herzegovina is held back by unresolved blockades of central government institutions, as well as the often dysfunctional relations between institutions and government representatives, which are now exacerbated by the health emergency. The working climate, the political atmosphere in Bosnia and Herzegovina needs to be improved. Negative and inciting rhetoric must stop. Leaders need to come together to change things for the better. Please allow me to end by asking a question to Mr. Dodik. I don't know whether he is still with us, but the question is what you will do in order to end glorification of convicted war criminals in the Republika Srpska. Thank you very much.
I thank Germany for its statement, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of China. Again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vasily. Thank you for hosting this Arria-Formula meeting. I would like to extend my delegation's welcome to the participation of the political leaders of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The signing of the Dayton Peace Agreement in 1995 is a landmark moment in the history of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Over the past 25 years, Bosnia and Herzegovina has enjoyed political stability, relaxation of ethnic relations, and social economic development by and large. We hope the parties in Bosnia and Herzegovina will take the anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement as an opportunity to strengthen dialogue and cooperation, enhance mutual trust, and tackle the challenges of governance through consultation and coordination to achieve harmonious coexistence and common development of all ethnicities. Sustaining peace, sustainability, and development in Bosnia and Herzegovina is in the common interest of regional countries and the international community at large. China respects the independence, unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the choice made by the people for their country's future. We hope the High Representative of the Secretary General and the European Union-led military operation will work in accordance with their mandates to help maintain security and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. After the outbreak of COVID-19, China provided strong support for Bosnia and Herzegovina to fight the pandemic, and we will continue to do so. We will also make contributions to Bosnia and Herzegovina's national development by deepening our cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative. China will stand with the Bosnia and Herzegovina people and continue working with the international community for lasting peace, stability, and development in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you, Vasily.
I thank China for its statement. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Estonia. Gert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vasily. First off, I fully echo Günther's introductory remarks. We fully support the work of the Office of High Representative, and we condemn all personal attacks on Mr. Inzko. 25 years ago, the Dayton Peace Agreement brought an end to nearly 4 years of brutal war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This was a very historic and important day for the country. The political situation in the country 25 years ago was completely different from the one we're seeing today. A lot has changed, and in a significantly positive direction. More than 80% of the population of Bosnia and Herzegovina support the EU integration. This number speaks for itself. The Bosnia and Herzegovina's presidency renewal of the commitment to fulfill the 14 key priorities of the European Commission opinion is a very positive development. And we hope the implementation of these priorities will remain high on the presidency's agenda. Estonia is certain that Bosnia and Herzegovina's future is joined with the Euro-Atlantic path, in line with the legitimate aspiration of its citizens. We note positively the progress made during the past few months, in particular the adoption of legislative amendments for local elections in Mostar, which must lead to their organization on December 20 for the first time since 2008. 25 years on, there is still much work to be done. In bringing Bosnia and Herzegovina and its citizens closer to the EU's perspective, all political leaders of the country should deliver concrete results and implement fundamental reforms. We urge the implementation of the revised National War Crimes Processing Strategy adopted by Bosnia and Herzegovina Council of Ministers. We underline the need to work towards strengthening the rule of law, fight against corruption, and implement binding judicial decisions. It is disappointing to learn that divisive rhetoric and frequent actions targeting the country's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and even its constitution have continued. Moreover, downplaying the tragic Srebrenica genocide in any way is unacceptable. Spreading nationalist and provocative rhetoric, denying war crimes, or glorifying convicted war criminals is not in line with the country's Euro-Atlantic perspective, does not contribute to reconciliation, and must stop. We urge the authorities of Bosnia and Herzegovina to take concrete steps to promote an environment conducive to reconciliation in order to overcome the legacies of the war, in particularly in relation to the 25th anniversary. Pardon me. In particularly in relation to the 25th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide and the Dayton Peace Agreement. In Dayton Agreement, the future of Bosnia-Herzegovina was shaped by the country's leaders together with its neighbors and the international community. 25 years after, the responsibility is fully in the hands of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Only their leaders can bring the country together, respect the principles of international law, promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. The rule of law and good governance plays a major role towards the aim of well-being of all its citizens. Estonia calls on all levels of government of Bosnia and Herzegovina to work in solidarity and unity. Finally, a question: how does the opening of the student dormitory in Pale near Sarajevo in honor of convicted war criminal Radovan Karadzic or paying respect to the convicted war criminal Momcilo Krajisnik fit in with the country's Euro-Atlantic perspectives and the spirit of Dayton Agreement? I thank you.
I thank Estonia for its statement. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States. Richard, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vasily. The United States commends Bosnia and Herzegovina, like many of the other speakers, for reaching the milestone of 25 years of peace since signing the Dayton Accords. The agreement created a framework to rebuild and provide a stable and prosperous future for the people of the country. In that spirit, the United States has envisioned the country as a democratic, inclusive, and prosperous one that would be on the path to full Euro-Atlantic integration. We envision a nation responsible for its own destiny. The people of Bosnia and Herzegovina have displayed tremendous determination and resilience over the end of the war, but much work remains to be done, and the United States remains committed to helping with that work, as we have since the Accords were signed in Ohio 25 years ago. Though much progress has been made, we have heard about some of the problems. Hostilities have lingered, and they manifest themselves in zero-sum ethno-nationalist politics. Bosnia and Herzegovina's leaders have a responsibility to work toward mutual respect, promote and protect human rights, improve governance, increase accountability, counter corruption. All of this obviously will better serve the population and elevate the country. It is unfortunate that today's discussion was not conceived and structured in a way that allowed for all stakeholders' voices to be heard and incorporated. I heard your opening comments, Vasily, but Bosniak participation and inclusion in political dialogues is essential, we believe, for a stable and prosperous future for the country. Let me say that in addition to our political engagement, the United States has remained deeply committed to the country's economic development. We have provided Bosnia and Herzegovina with over $2 billion in assistance since the 1990s, and we continue to provide high-level diplomatic and military support to the OSCE mission, the Office of the High Representative, and to the NATO headquarters in Sarajevo. We have partnered on post-war reconciliation, humanitarian assistance, human rights, the rule of law, infrastructure development, and the modernization of the defense sector. Finally, let me echo the comments that have been made by my German and Estonian colleagues in particular. given the remarks that we just heard from one of the speakers for 30 minutes, I feel it's important to state that the United States strongly supports the Office of the High Representative and High Representative Insko. The designation of the High Representative was a key component of the Dayton Accords. The Office of the High Representative's role in overseeing the implementation of civilian aspects of the Accord remains indispensable and necessary. That said, as we heard, the Peace Implementation Council has set clear conditions that must be met before the High Representative's office can be closed. The 5+2 conditions and objectives must first be met before Bosnia and Herzegovina is ready to graduate from international supervision. Let me just end by saying the United States remains committed to assisting the country with the reforms necessary to complete 5+2. Our job is to support Bosnia and Herzegovina in creating a future in which all its citizens live in harmony. This will lead to a country, a Bosnia and Herzegovina, that reaches its full potential and can play a vital role in security and peace in Western Europe and as Europe as a whole. Thank you.
I thank United States for the statement, and I would like to say, Richard, I can't but agree with you. We would also like to have seen here another representative from Bosnia, and it was, unfortunately, it was not our preference that he has chosen not to participate. But as I said, he made his mark on our meeting by circulating a letter. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of France. Shiraz, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And like others, we would like to thank Russia and the briefers for their remark, while deploring, obviously, the personal attacks against the High Representative. We fully support the High Representative as a key component of the Dayton Accords, and we hope that everyone will refrain for any further attacks in our meeting today, and that the chair will facilitate in this regard the good discussion between all participants. We also regret that the 3 members of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, who are the highest democratically elected representative of the citizens in the country, have not been able to brief us alongside with our briefers today. We should here be aiming at strengthening the institution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, not weakening them. We welcome, obviously, the participation of the High Representative Valentin Insko and of the EU delegation as we look at the future as Bosnia and Herzegovina rather than to the past. Mr. Chair, 25 years ago, everyone said it, the peace accords initiated in Dayton and signed in Paris put an end to the most deadly conflict in Europe since World War II. We pay tribute to all victims and to all those who worked with determination to silence the arms, including to the French soldier who made the ultimate sacrifice in the service of peace. The Dayton Accords not only ended the fighting, but also created the basis for a lasting peace. If significant progress has been made in addressing the legacy of the conflict, much more needs to be done to achieve genuine reconciliation. France is, like others, concerned that some political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina glorified convicted war criminals on a regular basis. We believe this must stop. The important work done by the judiciary at national and international level must continue and must be respected. There should be no room for historical revisionism. 25 years after the peace agreement, Bosnia and Herzegovina looks towards the future and to the prospect of accession to the European Union. This is the wish of a very large majority of the citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Participation in the European institution requires highly structured states and efficient government functioning. In accordance with the European Commission's opinion of May 2019, It is up to the leaders of Bosnia and Herzegovina to undertake far-reaching reforms to consolidate the rule of law, to improve the functionality of the central state, but also to ensure equality and non-discrimination for all citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina can count on France and the European Union to support its reform and its development, but we can only support efforts. The onus is on the political leaders of the country who still need to demonstrate political will. To conclude, I want, like others, say that we fully support Bosnia and Herzegovina to advance along the path towards peace and prosperity. We firmly believe that Bosnia and Herzegovina belongs to Europe geographically, historically, culturally. Its future is European, and it's up to Bosnia and Herzegovina to turn this prospect into a reality. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I thank Franz for his statement. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. Sonia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The importance of the General Framework Agreement for Peace, the Dayton Peace Accords, which brought an end to the conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina, cannot be overstated. As we mark its 25th anniversary, it is essential that the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, together with the international community, take the opportunity to look ahead collectively to the positive and prosperous future that Bosnia and Herzegovina deserves as a single, united and sovereign country. The United Kingdom remains committed to supporting the country's security, democracy and prosperity. While we welcome the joint statement of the tripartite presidency to mark the anniversary, it is actions, not words, that are most important. An opportunity was missed to commemorate the occasion visibly. This could have recognized jointly the suffering on all sides and promoted the further reconciliation that continues to be necessary. It is also regrettable that the Russian Federation here today have not taken the opportunity to focus on strengthening Bosnia and Herzegovina by inviting its highest elected representatives, but instead have chosen to use this Arria format as a platform for division rather than unity on this anniversary. By inviting leaders of political parties rather than all three members of the tripartite presidency, our Russian colleagues have focused on a divisive discussion along ethnic and territorial lines, as we have all just heard. We are glad that the organizers of this Arria agreed to the proposal to invite High Representative Inzko. I would like to make clear that the UK fully supports the work of the High Representative and his team in the important role that they continue to play. As others have said, we deplore the personal attacks on him heard today. I would like to make 4 points. First, functionality of the state. The UK supports and cooperates closely with the entities of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but successful entities require a functional state. Too often the state has been undermined by those who advance divisive nationalist interests and rhetoric at the expense of addressing shared challenges such as unemployment, migration, climate change, corruption, and serious organized crime. This in turn makes many talented citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina vote with their feet and immigrate. Second, the constitution. I turn now to the question of reforms to the constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina. As the Constitutional Court made clear, the Dayton Agreement has always allowed for the state's evolution to enable it to function properly. Everyone, constituent peoples and others, must have the right to live, to represent, be represented, and participate equally in their country's future. The legally elected representatives of Bosnia and Herzegovina must make these changes, taking into account decisions of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the Sejdić-Finci decision and other related judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, which remain unimplemented. It is essential that changes, including those necessary to the constitutional framework, are on the basis of broad consensus and for the greater good of all citizens. All elected representatives need to find a path forward. This will require compromise and cooperation from all sides. It is not acceptable that governments are still not fully formed 2 years after elections, and nor is it acceptable to reject those who have been elected legally and in line with the Constitution based on dislike of the decision of the electorate. Third, rule of law. Strengthening the rule of law is essential. While we look forward to a time when they may not be necessary, international judges in the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, an original Dayton institution, of course, continue to be a vital safeguard in Bosnia and Herzegovina's judiciary. Fourth, reconciliation. The UK continues to support reconciliation efforts in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Western Balkans more widely, including through our project programming and our role in the Berlin process and the Peace Implementation Council. Earlier this year, we marked the 25th anniversary of the genocide at Srebrenica. We acknowledge the suffering on all sides of the Balkans conflict. It's only through meaningful reconciliation across communities that we can fully overcome the painful legacies of the past. It is therefore sad to see some leaders at first accepting this dark piece of history, but then changing their narrative to deny the Srebrenica genocide for political reasons. This will not build a strong future. I would like to conclude by calling once again for an end to the glorification of convicted war criminals, instances of which we keep seeing, including in the past few weeks. Glorification is unacceptable and merely serves to reinforce deep societal divisions which threaten to block Bosnia and Herzegovina's progress. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the representative of UK for her statement. Frankly, I was somewhat puzzled to hear comments that she made. I think that in my introductory statement, I made it clear what was the reason for the choice of today's briefers. We deliberately chose not to invite the officials, but chose rather the most representative parties of the constituent peoples, who in fact represent the civil society. And that was the reason. Yes, we are celebrating 25th anniversary of Dayton, but we should not shy away from challenges that the implementation of Dayton presents. And today's discussion, whether someone likes it or not, but testified to it, however sorrowful that is, but that only makes us work even harder for the full and faithful implementation of Dayton. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Belgium. Karen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Vasily, for organizing this Arria-Formula meeting, which should have given us an opportunity to celebrate an important milestone for Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also for Europe. Let me first reiterate Belgium's full support to the High Representative, Mr. Insko, and his office that continues to play an indispensable role in overseeing the implementation of the Dayton Peace Agreement. As such, we deplore the personal attacks of the briefers on the High Representative. And as others have been saying, we also regret that the request for a more balanced approach in the choice of the briefers has not been taken on board, and that not all the 3 members of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina had the ability to brief us today. I would like to focus my attention on 3 points. First, the importance of cooperation and coordination across different governance structure. Second, the need for reconciliation. And third, the Euro-Atlantic aspirations of Bosnia and Herzegovina. On November 21st, 25 years ago, the Dayton Peace Agreement was reached, putting an end to 3.5-year-long Bosnian war. But ending the war wasn't the sole aim of the agreement. By preserving Bosnia and Herzegovina as a single, united and sovereign country with a complex governance structure, the parties aim to build bridges between the different citizens of the country. However, the cooperation and coordination needed to make this governance structure fully effective is all too often being replaced by mistrust, nationalistic rhetorics, divisive actions, the blockage of decision-making, and even threats of unilateral withdrawal from institutions. Political infighting and impasse must make room for good governance centered around the needs of the Bosnian people. All parties should show the necessary political will in this regard. My second point with regard to reconciliation, in order to come to a durable peace, it is necessary for Bosnia and Herzegovina population and particularly its political elite to deal with its past. No reconciliation is possible without sincere recognition of the crimes committed during the war, including the Srebrenica genocide 25 years ago. Revision or denial of war crimes and the glorification of war criminals undermine this process. The adoption of a law penalizing the denial of genocide and war crimes, qualified as such by international justice, could help prevent such actions. Concrete steps must be taken to combat impunity by ensuring the effective prosecution of war criminals and by shedding light on the fate of victims. Victims and survivors must be at the center of these efforts. Their rights must be guaranteed, as well as their meaningful participation in reconciliation efforts. Survivors deserve truth, justice, and reparation for crimes committed against their family members. In this regard, we take positive note of the adoption of the revised National War Crime Strategy and encourage its implementation. Reconciliation also requires the development of a shared vision and understanding of the past. The two schools under one roof policy that only further instills ethnic prejudice and reinforces mistrust must be brought to an end. Thirdly, as was stated by the High Representative of the European Union during his most recent visit to Sarajevo, the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina lies in the European Union. This will require enacting the necessary reforms. We welcome the steps taken by Bosnia and Herzegovina in this regard. However, more progress is needed, including regarding the rule of law and the fight against corruption. The full exercise of human rights and fundamental freedoms by all citizens equally is key. In this regard, it is important to ensure the principle of equality and non-discrimination of citizens, notably by addressing the Sejdic-Finci ruling and other relevant rulings of the European Court of Human Rights. 25 years after the Dayton Peace Agreement, Bosnia and Herzegovina has emerged as a single, united and sovereign country. We hope that the cultural plurality that once divided Bosnia and Herzegovina will today become its biggest strength. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Belgium for its statement. I may seem to you somewhat excessively repetitive, but I would like once again to say that we invited all the representatives from all the three constituent peoples, and they all had the ability to participate. It was not us, but them who chose not to, at least some of them. Now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Indonesia. Roy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let me begin by thanking the Russian Federation for convening this meeting. Since its creation, the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina was aimed at stopping the most vicious conflict in Europe since the Second World War. The Dayton Peace Agreement, even with its own complexity, remains the most important document for Bosnia and Herzegovina. It provides stability and peace in the country. Nonetheless, the political division became more alarming, and it's crippling the framework. The way we see it, the rhetoric between political powers do nothing but harm to the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And against this backdrop, Mr. Chair, my delegation does not believe that the root cause relates to the constitution or the agreements or other political documents that we have had all this time. The root cause lies deep in the hearts, minds, and memories of the past generations of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the memories that are filled with hatred and fueled by anger. This kind of hostility needs to end before it affects the younger generations of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the future of the country. Mistrust among the constituent peoples and states in the region must be reduced. In its place, the participations of the youth and women in peace processes should be encouraged. Mr. Chair, that Bosnia and Herzegovina is multi-ethnic and multicultural is a fact. But as a society, we must be focused on what makes us stronger together, not on what divides us. I mean, for example, Indonesia, with over 1,200 ethnic groups and over 650 languages and many religions, has found strength, stability, and prosperity in being together. Unity is important, and although differences are real, the political leaders must act in the interest of better future. As long as there is no unity in Bosnia and Herzegovina, progress will always be difficult to make. Mr. Chair, let me close by expressing our long-standing support of the full implementations of the general framework in Bosnia and Herzegovina to find a lasting solution that can accommodate the needs of all her peoples. With the support of international community, we strongly believe Bosnia and Herzegovina authorities can finally find a lasting solution that can accommodate the needs of all stakeholders in the most peaceful way. I thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I thank Indonesia for its statement, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Niger. Augie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me at the outset to thank the Russian Federation for the initiating for this meeting as part of the commemoration of the 25th anniversary of the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Allow me also to thank all the briefers for their the quality of their presentation. Mr. President, 25 years ago, the Dayton Accord not only brought peace to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also initiated the reform necessary to build a state. While it's undeniable that progress has been made, notably the adoption of state symbol, the improvement of the tax system, and the implementation of judicial reform, the fact remains that several obstacles remain for the effective implementation for the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Although the holding of the local election on November 15, 2020 is a significant step forward in terms of respecting the election program in Bosnia and Herzegovina, uncertainties remain regarding the organization of election in the city of Mostar, where no election have been held since 2008. To this end, it is necessary that the various political actors make mutual concession so that the election in the city of Mostar, scheduled for 20 December 2020, are held in accordance with the agreement of 17 June 2020. Mr. President, despite some progress which is mentioned earlier, the implementation of the 5+2 agenda is stagnating or even regressing in some areas. This is evidenced by the continued deterioration of the rule of law, which is characterized by the questioning of the authority and the independence of the judiciary, the failure to respect constitutional and legal prescription, and the dysfunction of institutions. In addition, many challenges remain regarding the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and competencies of Bosnia and Herzegovina's main institution. In this context, appropriate reform must be implemented to foster tangible progress and long-term stability. The realization of the right of refugees and displaced persons remains central to the implementation of the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In this regard, we urge the authorities at all levels to create the political, economic, and social condition conducive to the voluntary return and harmonious reintegration of refugees and displaced persons. In conclusion, I would like to appeal to the various actors for constructive political commitment and ownership of the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Niger, and now I give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sven, you have the floor.
Vasily, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, we welcome and are very thankful to Russian Federation for Arria-Formula meeting to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We also welcome and thank the briefers of today's topic. As we had 3 briefers today from Bosnia and Herzegovina, my intervention to this important and timely event will be brief. I will just read the statement of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and as a diplomat, I'm presenting joint position of the body which is in charge of creating foreign policy, i.e. presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm reading now the statement. Joint statement of the members of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Accords, adopted by all members of the presidency on the November 19, 2020. Commemorating the 25th anniversary of Dayton Peace Accords represents an event of the utmost significance for Bosnia and Herzegovina, the entire Western Balkan region, and for Europe as a whole. The presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina expresses its full readiness and commitment to comply with the provisions of General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina as its integral part. The presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina expresses its gratitude to all the international partners who have given their contribution to the establishment and the preservance of peace, as well as the reconstruction of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Today, we have a unique opportunity to send a message properly indicating the significance of strengthening trust, peace, and mutual respect amongst all people and citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina, all of its parts, entities, Brčko district of Bosnia and Herzegovina, cantons, cities, and municipalities. The presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina welcomes the progress made in the fields of economy, education, democratization of society, rule of law, public administration, and all other fields since the signing of General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina to this day. The presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina reiterates its full readiness and commitment to strengthening good neighborly relations in the region based on mutual respect and appreciation in accordance with international law. The presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina finds that at this time of the pandemic, it is essential to improve cooperation with all international partners in a resolute fight against terrorism, COVID-19 pandemic, as well as regards to the migrant crisis. It is the responsibility of all levels of government in Bosnia and Herzegovina to increase efforts in order to provide to the peoples and citizens a dignified life with mutual respect and understanding. Today, we have the opportunity to remind of the duty to emphasize with the pain and suffering of all peoples and citizens and the commitment to show respect for all innocent victims of war. We, the members of Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, confirm our commitment to create a society made for all of its peoples and citizens, and particularly for the young people for whom we wish to enable to remain and have a future in their homeland. Thank you for your attention.
I thank Bosnia and Herzegovina for its statement. Now I give the floor to Ambassador Jovanovic, the Charge d'Affaires of Serbia to the United Nations. Marina, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Nebenzia, Serbia supports every effort aimed at promoting inclusive dialogue, and we thank the Russian Federation for convening this meeting of the Security Council in the area format 25th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement. I would also like to thank the briefers for their presentations and the participants for their remarks. My country has invested considerable in stabilizing the situation in the region. To that end, integrity and sovereignty is of paramount importance, and Serbia's position in regard of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Dayton Peace Agreement is clear. As a guarantor, Serbia recognizes Bosnia and Herzegovina as one with two entities, the Republic of Srpska and the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and supports all the decisions of that country brought in accordance with the competencies of and agreements among its three constituent peoples, the Serbs, Croats, and the Bosniaks. We shall continue to cooperate actively and constructively with the central and entity authorities as we continue to fully respect the right of the state to conduct independent foreign policy, including its right to join military political alliances, taking into account all along concrete individual activities that may or may not be conducive to the membership of those alliances. My country will support every agreement on or arrangement to be made between the two and among the three constituent peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina in a legal and legitimate way. Ambassador Nebenzia, your commendable decision to convene this meeting to mark the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Dayton Peace Agreement makes incumbent upon us to stress the need for reconfirming its importance, not only for the ending of the civil war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also in the context of stabilizing the country and the region as a whole. This opportunity to remind that the mechanism for the change of the agreement is well known, i.e. that it implies consent by the two entities and the three constituent peoples. Insistence and imposition of solutions from within or from outside of the country is therefore not acceptable. Serbia is convinced that a functional Bosnia and Herzegovina is possible without the change of the fundamental principles of the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, along with the reform package necessary for European integration on which the agreement does exist within the country. The incendiary rhetoric of some political leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina is the cause of our serious concern. Unilateral actions or threats to take unilateral actions run counter to the letter and spirit of the Dayton Peace Agreement and are hence unacceptable. The agreement, let me recall, resulted from a compromise reached through hard negotiations, and is a delicate balance between opposing concepts of the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, so that subsequent attempts to accord preference to any of the models prevalent 25 years ago would be disruptive of lasting stabilization of the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Mr. Chair, my country condemns unequivocally all crimes committed in the territory of the former Yugoslavia, including in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and considers that their perpetrators should be brought to justice. It feels deep regret for all victims and empathizes with their families, irrespective of their ethnic or religious belonging. In that context, it condemns every attempt to justify or deny a crime. Since both victims and perpetrators of crimes are of various ethnicities, Serbia insists on individualization of the guilt and is strongly opposed to collective criminalization, i.e. stigmatization of entire nations or ethnic groups. Regrettably, 25 years on, we cannot bring the victims of war back to life, the damage done by destruction. What we can and embark upon a road of economic and political and common prosperity. My country supports the efforts invested in establishing full truth of the conflicts in the former Yugoslavia and in bringing the perpetrators of crimes to justice, irrespective of their ethnic belonging. Also, it supports regional cooperation in processing war criminals, and to that it has concluded bilateral agreements with Bosnia and Herzegovina, providing for various forms of legal assistance. Our cooperation with Bosnia and Herzegovina in this is very successful indeed. Mr. Chair, we all need to be forward-looking to the benefit of all our citizens. The COVID-19 pandemic poses serious challenges to the world, many of which call for cooperation among states, both at global and regional levels. These difficult times are a stark reminder that only through solidarity and mutual cooperation in which good neighborliness is the first step. And let me point out that a high level of solidarity has indeed been shown between Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina and their citizens during the crisis. Let me reiterate that Serbia is open to conducting constructive and inclusive dialogue on all issues, differences, and positions entertained by other countries in particular by neighboring countries, in each format and in each circumstance. This has been confirmed on many occasions by pursuit of extensive and meaningful dialogue with the representatives of the institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, borne out by regular communication and successful cooperation between institutions of the two countries. Dialogue between the institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina is the only way to increase trust and confidence and reach compromise solutions on questions important for the future development of the country and by extension of the entire region. As it has done in the past, Serbia will continue to make a maximum and constructive contribution to this goal, firmly committed to regional peace and stability, reconciliation and prosperity. I thank you.
I thank Serbia for its statement. Now I give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of Croatia. Ivan, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Croatia welcomes this Arria-Formula meeting marking the 25th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement and providing for an opportunity to hear opinions of some influential political leaders and the High Representative on current challenges of implementation of Dayton and on the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We welcome participation of Mr. Čović in this debate, but regret the absence of a Bosniak representative. Republic of Croatia is a signatory as well as guarantor of the Dayton Peace Agreement. We strongly support the agreement as well as the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Dayton Peace Agreement had a crucial role in establishing the peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina and laying down the institutional framework of the country that consists of two entities and is home to three equal constituent peoples as well as other citizens. Mr. Chairperson, one of the fundamental pillars of the Dayton Peace Agreement is safeguarding the equality of three constituent peoples. It has to guide current efforts to address the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, as well as judgments of the Bosnia and Herzegovina Constitutional Court related to equality and non-discrimination of the constituent peoples and all citizens. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bosniaks have their equality additionally safeguarded by their largest numbers. Equality of Serbs is additionally protected by their separate entity, while Croats can only rely on the institutions which guarantee their legitimate parity representation and protection of their rights as one of three constituent peoples. The equality of all constituent peoples needs to be ensured through the reform of electoral law. We welcome the holding of successful local elections across the country on 15th November, as well as incoming elections in Mostar on 20th December. The period between these local elections and the next general elections in 2022 should be used to tackle the issue of electoral law reform. In this regard, we would like to underline the importance of the political agreement on amendments of electoral law signed by Mr. Izetbegovic and Mr. Čović in June this year. This agreement clearly shows signs of political will to reach a compromise and to tackle this important issue. The Republic of Croatia calls for open dialogue with and within Bosnia and Herzegovina to find answers to these contentious issues and underlines the need for support from international community. Ladies and gentlemen, 25 years after the Dayton Peace Agreement, Bosnia and Herzegovina is facing another historical challenge, the process of European integration. Croatia is fully supporting this process, which offers the best reform framework for the country and comprehensive transformation of the whole society, benefiting all of its citizens, especially the youth. However, the pace and current state of necessary reforms raise serious concerns. There are functional and political challenges that need to be addressed in order to achieve the necessary progress. Besides the slow pace of reforms, the return of internally displaced persons is still unsatisfactory, especially of Croats to Republika Srpska. The lack of condemnation of all atrocity crimes negatively reflects the process of return. The Republic of Croatia stands together with Bosnia and Herzegovina in overcoming all of its challenges and fully supports its path to the European Union, stability and prosperity. Thank you.
I thank Croatia for its statement. Now I give the floor to the permanent representative of India. Tiro, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This month is the 25th anniversary of the Dayton Agreement, an agreement that has provided 25 years of peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. While we have our own reservations on the Arria format per se, we thank you for commemorating this important event today. Dayton Agreement was the aftermath of the worst bloodbath on European territory since the Second World War. The priority was to not only stop the bloodshed and heal the wounds of ethnic division, but also produce an agreement that would enable state-building reforms. It is clear that significant progress has been achieved in Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially during the first decade after the signing of the agreement. To cite just a few examples, state symbols were successfully adopted, a new common currency established, a common passport and flag, a national anthem, and even a national football league, common license plates in order to enable freedom of movement, the taxation system improved, judicial reforms were implemented, and joint armed forces were established in a country where earlier 3 armies had fought against each other. These developments are important. However, even as we commemorate the achievements ushered in by the signing of the General Framework Agreement for Peace, we would do well to also recognize that the Dayton Agreement also brought forth an imperfect peace. Effective and efficient governance that could patch up ethnic fissures and result in social cohesion and inter-ethnic reconciliation was the need of the hour. But this was hampered by mistrust and inbuilt instability of a decentralized political system based on ethnicity and sustained by nationalist rhetoric, thereby undermining rule of law and the state's authority. These include inter alia blockages of institutions, primarily at the entity level and lately also at the state level. There are reports of systemic discrimination of the so-called others by vested interests, trying to invoke religious or nationalistic and divisive policies. Mr. Chairman, we pay homage to those who lost their lives during the genocide. Having witnessed genocide in our own neighborhood 50 years ago, we are convinced that while the attempts to seek justice for those who were killed continue, we must resist attempts to glorify war criminals. We welcome the adoption of the revised war crimes processing strategy by Bosnia and Herzegovina's Council of Ministers in September this year, in which the most serious war crime cases needs to be prioritized for prosecution and completion by 2023. We remain hopeful that the judicial institutions will reach an objective outcome. The vote for local elections on 15th November, where the Bosnian people voted for political parties of all hues and ideologies, was a vote for continuity with change. Going forward, the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina lies in the hands of the people of Bosnia and their elected leaders. The choice is between a future of cooperation, development, and peace, or of divisiveness. As a democratic and pluralistic country, India hopes that the right choice will be made and all parties and leaders recommit themselves to work together in a constructive and inclusive manner. Thank you.
I thank the representative of India for his statement. I apologize, Tiro, that my mic was on while he was speaking. Now I give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of Austria. Actually, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you, Vasily. Thanks for organizing this meeting. If ever we needed a recent reminder how important it is that the international community stays fully involved in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it was this meeting. And if ever we needed to be reminded of a clear and unequivocal reason why we need Valentin Inzko as our High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina, why we need to support fully the OHR, and why we must express our lasting gratitude to Valentin's many efforts in difficult circumstances, then it was this meeting. 25 years ago, we witnessed an end to a terrible conflict in Europe. The Dayton Peace Accords stopped bloodshed and suffering and created a blueprint for peaceful coexistence. Today, when conflicts in Europe have re-emerged, the success of Dayton in ending this bloodshed needs renewed recognition. During the war in the Balkans, a large number of people had to flee. Many of them went west, including to Austria. Among them, our current Minister for Justice, Alma Sadic, who came to Austria from Tuzla as a child. Due to Austria's close ties with Bosnia and Herzegovina on many levels, as well as our own history, the war, ethnic cleansing, and genocide, as in the case of Srebrenica, was followed with utmost consternation. The 1995 Dayton Peace Agreement, which ended these horrors, was met with special relief. Since Dayton, Bosnia and Herzegovina has made important progress, in part due to the continued engagement of the international community, and especially in the first years following the agreement, determined action by the High Representatives. Annex 10 is a vital component of the Dayton Agreement. Support to the agreement includes support to the High Representative in the implementation of his mandate. We therefore urge all UN members to support the office. Mr. Chairperson, the sovereignty, unity, integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina continue to be an essential for stability and peace in the Western Balkans and in Europe in general. The fact that Bosnia and Herzegovina has already served as a non-permanent member of the Security Council shows that the country is ready and able to actively contribute to global stability and security. Austria fully supports these efforts. From the very beginning, Austria actively participated in the UN-mandated peace operation IFOR, which also represented a major development for Austrian security policy. And today, Austria is the largest contributor to what has evolved into the EU-led operation EUFOR Althea. So much for the positive. But let's also be clear, not all is good in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The potential challenges to the Dayton Order and lasting peace and stability in Bosnia remain numerous. We still observe a political climate in Bosnia and Herzegovina marked by deep mistrust between the major ethnic groups and a lack of willingness to cooperate among each other for the good of the country as a whole. We all agree on the necessity to respect the key role of the Dayton Accords attribute to the three constituent peoples. Nevertheless, there is a regrettable lack of concern for the rights and interests of those citizens who do not consider themselves members of one of the constituent peoples, and of all those who set their hopes on a future which will take society in Bosnia and Herzegovina beyond ethnic divisions. The repeated recourse to secessionist and separatist rhetoric tries to undo the progress from Dayton and leads the country in the wrong direction, away from its path to EU integration. This is reckless behavior which must be strongly condemned. Again and again, we are faced with instances of denial or even glorification of war crimes, sometimes undertaken or backed by holders of political offices. This is not acceptable. We learned this the hard way from our own history in Austria. For the psychological scars of the war to heal, there must be accountability for war crimes and crimes against humanity by whoever committed them. During his briefing to the Security Council on 5th November, High Representative Inzko expressed the apprehension of many when he said, "The international community invested our trust in some politicians too early." Austria encourages politicians in Bosnia and Herzegovina to accept this as a constructive challenge and to show the world what Bosnians can achieve when they act together in a positive and constructive manner. Mr. Chairperson, in 1995, the first and foremost concern of the international community was to stop the bloodshed. Now there is a new objective and a more positive agenda shared by the whole population of Bosnia and Herzegovina: the integration of the country, together with the other states of the region, in the wider peace project embodied by the European Union, where all citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina enjoy the same rights. Austria strongly and actively supports this effort. In order to reach this goal, all political forces in Bosnia and Herzegovina need to develop a sense of shared responsibility for the greater good of the country as a whole and a far-sighted readiness to cooperate constructively with each other and implement necessary reforms. The road from Dayton to Brussels is not easy, but in the words of EU High Representative Josep Borrell, it indicates the direction to take Bosnia and Herzegovina from a post-conflict mindset to a pre-accession dynamic. This is, I believe, the best way to restore the confidence of citizens in a stable and prosperous future of their country, especially the young generation, those who are currently emigrating in such large numbers. They need to trust and they need the confidence in that they will have a decent future in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 1995, 25 years ago, not only was a transformative year for Bosnia and Herzegovina, it was for Austria too. 25 years ago, Austria joined the European Union. In these 25 years, the benefits of EU membership became crystal clear. Austrians enjoy them every single day. We hope the same for the population in Bosnia and Herzegovina one day. They deserve a future in peace, prosperity, and happiness. We will support them on this path on the way to the future in the European Union. Thank you.
I thank Austria for its statement, and now I give the floor to Ambassador Stefanilli of Italy. Stefano, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And let me start by thanking the Russian Federation for its invitation to participate in this event. As recalled in previous interventions, the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina paved the way for ending the most horrific conflict in Europe since World War II. And today's meeting is an opportunity to celebrate that historic achievement on its 25th anniversary and to look towards the future of the country. We have listened attentively to the presentations. We share the view of other delegations that a more institutional panel of briefers, as well as a representation of civil society, would have been appropriate and useful. At the same time, we appreciate inclusion among the panelists of the High Representative, whose mandate and office we continue to support. Italy aligns itself with the statement that will be made by the European Union and would like to add a few national remarks. As we celebrate 25 years of enduring peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we should never forget the innocent victims, particularly the civilian ones, of that tragic conflict. Bosnia and Herzegovina has come a long way since then. However, disunity and fractions are still present in the country, hampering its full potential. A true and effective reconciliation is therefore urgently needed. Italy firmly believes that all political actors in Bosnia and Herzegovina should engage in and promote such reconciliation through words and actions, putting aside inflammatory rhetoric and working together to build a common vision of the future of the country. The people of Bosnia and Herzegovina demand this better future. They want to live in a country where the younger generations may have a tangible perspective of prosperity without feeling forced to move abroad to fulfill their dreams. They want to have the same opportunities that young European citizens enjoy. To put it in simple terms, they want to become full-fledged European citizens. Italy stands by the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina and fully supports their quest for better opportunities and prospects. We know that the ultimate future of the country lies in the European Union and will spare no effort to help Bosnia and Herzegovina move decisively along this path. Such a strategic goal demands deep, modernizing reforms. We welcome the decisions adopted by the tripartite presidency in April and October, which provided a roadmap for the implementation of reforms in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in line with the European Commission's opinion of 2019. Preserving local ownership of the process is crucial to achieving sustainable and lasting reforms. We wholeheartedly encourage the leaders of Bosnia and Herzegovina to follow up on these decisions by working hard with a pragmatic and constructive approach to make substantial progress in this sphere. We do believe this can be achieved if there is political will. It will also be crucial to strengthen the role of civil society in the reform process. as consistently advocated by Italy, including in the OSCE framework. Only through a bottom-up approach can we guarantee that these reforms really respond to the needs and expectations of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, thus reinforcing the accountability of politicians and institutions. Much work awaits us in the coming months. We look forward to welcoming back Bosnia and Herzegovina into the European family as a partner for security, growth, and stability. And thank you.
I thank Italy for its statement. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kenya, Ambassador Kiboina. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies. I wish to sincerely thank the Russian Federation for organizing this Arria-Formula meeting and for inviting us to participate. We also thank the briefers, but we wish to deplore the personal attack on the person of the High Representative. Kenya commends Bosnia and Herzegovina on the achievement of the milestone of the 25th anniversary of the General Framework Agreement for Peace and Progress towards Peace. This agreement laid the foundation for continued peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. 25 years on, the progress made is encouraging. An example is the recent adoption of the legislative amendments for local elections soon to take place in Mostar. However, much still remains to be done. We call on the government of Bosnia and Herzegovina to recommit itself to the full implementation of the obligations under the Peace Accord and agreements, and to further commit to strengthen the rule of law in the country. We also call on all political actors to respect state institutions and constitutional order, and to focus on efforts towards unifying the country and strengthening the ties that bind their people in order to lay a firm foundation for lasting and meaningful reconciliation. We welcome the role of regional organizations such as the European Union and the European Economic Commission to engage with the stakeholders, particularly with regard to trust and confidence building measures. Kenya will continue to support the people and the government of Bosnia and Herzegovina in their efforts to build a peaceful and prosperous future. I thank you.
I thank Kenya for its statement, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Norway.
Thank you, and thank you to the Russian Federation for arranging this meeting. This year, we mark the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Dayton Peace Agreement. The agreement laid the foundation for the establishment of a new state in a multi-ethnic place that had just emerged from a devastating war. The lasting peace that followed continues to be an opportunity for Bosnia and Herzegovina to carry on its transition to a functional, reform-oriented, democratic European country. Political will and strong leadership are essential to ensure continued progress over time. This year, we also mark the 25th commemoration of the Srebrenica genocide. We must fully acknowledge the past if we are to heal wounds and build a future based on truth and reconciliation. We welcome that for the first time since 2008, local election will take place in the city of Mostar. We are, however, concerned about the divisive rhetoric expressed in the run-up to these elections. Continued reforms are necessary to secure stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the welfare of its people. We encourage the government and all parties to strive for the implementation of comprehensive reforms in a manner that benefits all citizens. A vibrant civil society and an independent press are key to continued democratic and economic development. At the same time as we mark the 25th anniversary for the peace agreement, we also mark the 20th anniversary of Security Council Resolution 1325. We encourage Bosnia and Herzegovina to use this anniversary as an inspiration to further implement their own national action plan on women, peace and security. Their national action plan includes confidence-building measures that can be powerful tools to help further reconciliation and to improve normalization of relations between the constituencies of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Norway will remain an active partner in supporting reforms and further Euro-Atlantic integration in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As a final point, let me echo many of my colleagues regretting the personal attack on the High Representative. Let me also express gratitude to High Representative Inzko for his long-standing commitment for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
I thank Norway for its statement. Now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Ireland.
Thank you, Ambassador, and I want to thank the Permanent Mission of the Russian Federation for the invitation to this event today and to our briefers for their participation. Like others, I want to say at the outset, just in relation to the series of negative attacks on the High Representative, to emphasize Ireland's strong support both for the Office of the High Representative and for H.R. Inzko's work, his role in discharging his functions there. We were pleased to see that the High Representative was participating today. We regret, like others, that it wasn't possible to have the necessary balance for the commemoration that the presence of the three members of the collegial presidency would have provided. Mr. Chair, we welcome this opportunity today to mark the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords. The Peace Accords, though not perfect, brought an end to a brutal and bitter conflict and fashioned the modern Bosnia-Herzegovina. So this anniversary is an opportune time to reflect on the progress made and to look at what more needs to be done to achieve the lasting peace envisioned by that agreement. Let me start by acknowledging that Bosnia-Herzegovina's achievement over the past quarter century in building up its institutions of government and developing its economy and society has been a remarkable one. We know from our own experience of conflict and peace building on our island that for reconciliation to be meaningful and enduring, it's important to remember the past in a respectful and honest way and to work cooperatively for a better future. The local elections held last week can mark an important step towards building trust, consolidating democracy, and achieving lasting peace. Equally too, the agreement to amend the electoral law to allow local elections in Mostar next month for the first time since 2008 is a landmark achievement in itself. But it's vitally important that politics not only works, but is seen to work for all of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The results of the 2018 general elections are still not fully implemented, and we urge all concerned parties to proceed with the formation of the governments at federation and cantonal levels. Mr. Chair, we must never forget that divisive and negative rhetoric serves only to deepen existing divisions and makes reconciliation, as others have said, increasingly difficult to achieve. This year, of course, also marks the 25th anniversary of the genocide at Srebrenica, a shameful episode in modern European history, the memory of which can never be eradicated. It serves as a grim reminder to all of us of where such divisions and rhetoric have taken us in the past. As others have said, there can be no place in the modern Bosnia-Herzegovina for the glorification of war criminals and the denial of genocide. Mr. Chair, all parties have to work together towards common goals in the country to address the challenges posed by COVID-19 and its effects on the economy, to take urgent measures to deal more effectively with migration and prevent a humanitarian crisis from unfolding, and to step up the pace too on implementing the reforms needed for EU accession. The European perspective of Bosnia and Herzegovina is clear and irrevocable. Together with our EU partners, Ireland remains fully committed to supporting Bosnia and Herzegovina along its European path. That EU support was most recently visible in the new economic and investment plan for the region, aimed at boosting its long-term economic recovery. It's essential too that this economic investment is coupled with the implementation of fundamental reforms based on European values, in particular in the rule of law area, to restore citizens' trust in the judicial system. Bosnia and Herzegovina can only move forward on its EU path when it delivers on this critical mass of reforms. The representatives now elected in those local elections, working together with national leaderships, must cooperate to address the needs of citizens. And this means addressing the needs of all citizens. It's incumbent on all parties to uphold and respect equality, including gender equality and inclusion, as key principles. So to conclude, the Dayton Accords created a single unified state with 3 peoples. 25 years on, it's more important than ever that parties set aside their differences and work together for the common good and for a peaceful and prosperous future for the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
I thank Ambassador Kelly for his statement, and now I give the floor to the Deputy Permanent Representative of the European Union, Ambassador Gonzato. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for inviting us to today's discussion. And allow me also to thank the briefers, and in particular, High Representative Inzko, to whom I would like to express our full support and our deep appreciation for his work. Mr. Chair, we are here today to commemorate the Dayton Peace Agreement, which 25 years ago ended one of the bloodiest wars we have ever seen on the European continent since the Second World War. A devastating conflict that led to genocide, to more than 100,000 deaths, and over 1 million refugees. We remember the tragedies of the past with a promise never to let them happen again. But while remembering the atrocities of the past, we look towards the future and the road that the EU and BIH have undertaken together to build a peaceful and prosperous future for the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Over the past 25 years, much progress has been made towards building a stable and democratic Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yet the journey is not over and a lot remains to be done. During his visit to Sarajevo, on the occasion of the Dayton Peace Agreement anniversary, the EU High Representative and Vice President Josep Borrell reaffirmed that the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina lies in the European Union. In addition, he recalled that to achieve this objective, the political leadership of the country will have to enact much needed reforms. The EU is a project for peace and for people. Aspiring members of the Union are to engage in a continuous process of reconciliation. History shows that reconciliation is a process, not an event, a process which needs to be reaffirmed persistently every day. The rejection of conflict, hate, and division, the acceptance of cooperation and reconciliation is central to the European Union and to its values. And so it is for Bosnia and Herzegovina and its people. EU integration remains a key objective for the country, uniting political parties and the general public alike. 80% of the population share this goal. And the 25th anniversary of Dayton can be a turning point to translate this wish into concrete action, to move from post-war to pre-accession, in other words, from Dayton to Brussels. In December 2019, the Council of the European Union reiterated its unequivocal commitment to Bosnia and Herzegovina's EU perspective as a single, united, and sovereign country. The EU urged executive and legislative bodies at all levels of government to start addressing the 14 key priorities identified in the Commission's opinion on Bosnia and Herzegovina's application for membership of the European Union, in line with the interests of all citizens to make progress towards the European Union. The reforms needed are deep, but they are essential to make the country's governance more effective. While taking into account the specificities of the country, they will at some point need to include changes to the institutional and electoral frameworks. On electoral reform, the EU calls for an inclusive process in line with European standards that would eliminate all forms of inequality and discrimination in the electoral process. No legislative or political step should be taken which would make the implementation of the Sejic-Finci ruling and the related European Court of Human Rights rulings more challenging. In the past months, Bosnia and Herzegovina's authorities have made some steps to address the opinion's key priorities. The EU welcomes that for the first time since 2008, on the 20th of December 2020, local elections will also take place in the city of Mostar. We also welcome the recent adoption of the revised national war crime strategy and call for its swift implementation. This will contribute to the wider goal of promoting an environment conducive to reconciliation. We call on the authorities of the country to build on this momentum and continue to engage on reforms, thereby giving tangible proof that Bosnia and Herzegovina is willing to do what it takes to become a member of the EU. Only by delivering on reforms will Bosnia and Herzegovina advance towards the EU. Bosnia and Herzegovina, like the rest of Europe, continues to be impacted by the global COVID-19 pandemic. In these difficult times, the EU remains firmly engaged in assisting Bosnia and Herzegovina in addressing the immediate health needs as well as the long-term social and economic impact resulting from the pandemic. The recent Commission's Economic and Investment Plan once again demonstrate the EU's strong commitment towards Bosnia and Herzegovina and towards all the Western Balkans partners. Lastly, with regard to the political and security situation on the ground and the importance of maintaining a safe and secure environment, the European Union reiterates its firm support to EUFOR Althea and to the mandate entrusted to it by the Security Council. Let me conclude, Chair, by saying that the 25th anniversary of Dayton can and should mark the beginning of a new phase, not just for Bosnia and Herzegovina, but for the whole region. Thank you.
I thank EU for its statement. Now, before that exhausts the list of the speakers for today. Before wrapping up the meeting, I would like to give the floor to our briefers in the order that they spoke. I would like to remind that we've been in this meeting for already 2 hours, 45 minutes. So I would request, plead with our briefers to be concise when they make their concluding remarks. And now I will start with giving the floor to Mr. Insko. Mr. Insko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vasily Alexeyevich. Mr. Chairman, I would like to express my gratitude to everybody who supported my office, but also me personally. I also would like to reiterate that the entire international community in BiH stands and works for a joint aim of reinforcing peace and stability of the country and also of further progress. As we have seen today, we work in a difficult political environment. I'm not able to comment all accusations and all false accusations, nor is this the right opportunity, but I wish to clarify. I have not used the bomb powers since 2011. I have imposed nothing since 2011. I also have not imposed any decision on the state property. This was local ownership. It was done by the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina twice. And the last time this February. So it was not imposed by Valentin Inzko. Also, my office is not working against any constituent people or its representatives, but we are fully committed to the Dayton Peace Agreement, and we are mandate bound to push back on those who want to roll back the situation in BiH. I also want to clarify that I have expressed my sincere condolences for the death of Patriarch Irinei. And I did it in at least 2 capacities, of course, also as a person, but I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you, but I'm founding member of the Orthodox faculty in Belgrade since 1986. It is called Ktitor in Greek language, Ktitor, yeah. I'm also a donor and benefactor of the Orthodox Church in New York, which burned down a few years ago. And also I'm a benefactor of the Orthodox Church in Mostar, which was destroyed during the last war in 92-95. So much about my relations to the Orthodox Church. And I think you will excuse me if I mentioned it, yeah. I am also very shocked, and I would like to express my deep disappointment that Mr. Dodik called Mr. Ashdown a criminal. If he calls me a criminal, I'm alive and I can defend myself. But Mr. Lord Ashdown passed away and he cannot defend himself. I'm really disgusted. Yeah. Finally, I would like to congratulate Mr. Jovic for the agreement on Mostar, enabling elections in Mostar, which have also been mentioned by many delegations. So we will have, after 12 years, elections in the city of Mostar, the 5th biggest city in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Vasily Alexeyevich, thank you very much also.
Thank you, Mr. Insko. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Čović.
Gospodine predsjedavajući, jedno izuzetno hvala.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity to address the meeting. I say that it is not good to close the eyes before the problems with the functioning of Bosnia and Herzegovina. A difficult political situation is our reality, and we need to seek a solution conjointly. Our path to the EU should be, I think, marked in July next year with the status of a candidate of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But by that time, we should have resolved the issue of the representation to the houses of peoples, the Bosnian level. And I'm sure that Bosnia and Herzegovina has its European future. That's imperative for me. The major threat to Bosnia and Herzegovina is unitarism, not multi-ethnicity, that has been its foundation for centuries. So once again, I'd like to thank all of you, and I do hope that we'll be wise enough to use our EU pathway and our NATO pathway and find all common denominators and set aside everything that divides us. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to address the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Čović. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Dodik.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank the United Nations for cherishing the practice that small countries and small people have an opportunity to share their positions and this high forum. And this is something that elevates the United Nations to the highest position on the scale of values. I'm really glad to have heard all briefers and representatives. I have nothing but utmost respect for their countries and functions. Some of them are new, some to the United Nations, but we have heard identical speeches that we have been hearing for more than 20 years. But the realities of the situation are quite different now. Progress and success has been achieved here that is worth mentioning, but also there are manipulations that must be noted. We've heard and seen many of you who have clearly supported Mr. Insko, and we've heard some of you, all of you who've supported the Dayton Agreement and its implementation. But it is clear from Mr. Insko's last intervention that he understands that the support has been extended to him and his office, not the Dayton Agreement. And it seems to me that the major problem lies there. He does not have the right to treat the Dayton Agreement in this way. I did not want to attack anyone. That's what I keep telling Mr. Insko. Whenever I have the chance, I'll wholeheartedly fight for the rights of my people, because this is an honorable, proud and freedom-loving people. Bosnia and Herzegovina does stand a chance, and I'm saying this to all of you. Bosnia and Herzegovina can survive and is sustainable as a Dayton-based construct with 2 entities and 3 constituent peoples for as long as Croats do not actually seek an entity for themselves, which would make it then a country with 3 entities and 3 constituent peoples, which would only be fair and just. In any case, we've heard that some of you wanted me to respond. We've heard those who preached me as an elected representative of our people as to what I should do. Thank you very much for your good intentions. We've also heard those that are falsely worried about the processes in Bosnia and Herzegovina, such as young people leaving, and at the same time, their countries have done everything to stimulate the migration that was not even possible to see a couple of years ago. Yes, this year we mark a lot of anniversaries. Also, Auschwitz, the 75th anniversary of Auschwitz, and also some other anniversaries. Some have supported the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'd like to share with you one thing. In your countries, I mean, just do here and apply here what you have applied in your countries. The Constitutional Court cannot be the author of the Constitution. It cannot write the Constitution. It is there to apply it. It is so simple in many countries. Some of you have asked me, and I guess this was coordinated and agreed upon, what I'm going to do about the glorification of war crimes. I do not support war crimes. I do not support war criminals. I'm not a person who was highly decorated because of the participation in war actions and combats. I was a reserve officer, and that's how I ended the war. During the war, I helped Bosniaks and Croats, Bosniaks just as I helped Serbs and Croats. And my role in the war is very well known. And what I'll do about this includes several things. I respect and mourn every single victim, irrespective of the ethnic background. I support and uphold the conviction of all committed war crimes. But some have escaped the justice. All Serbs that were sought actually were also convicted by the Hague Tribunal. But I have the right to say that we think that the Hague Tribunal was not fair towards the Serbs, not because of these or those intentions, but somehow we see that there is a disproportionate number of Bosniak war criminals detained before the tribunal. I agree, and I here acknowledge yet again our support to EU integration. There is no doubt, but please do not expect that we'll sacrifice our fundamental rights guaranteed by the Dayton Agreement and Constitution for the sake of some future, for a future promise and expectations. The EU is the end for ourselves, and we want to get there through the cooperation of our communities, through the cooperation that Belgian communities have, and they have learned that it is only through cooperation that a sustainable governance is possible. I've heard some of the representatives of the EU who supported the OHR, but they did not support the Dayton Agreement. Believe me, it's not the same. Maybe it does sound the same to you. Well, if it is the same, if you please explain to me. In 2005, the Venice Commission, which is highly respected by the EU, offered its interpretation, saying that the EU path of Bosnia and Herzegovina is incompatible and impossible with the OHR in place and foreign judges of the Constitutional Court. And today, yet again, we've heard the support expressed by some to these foreign constitutional judges. We need to be sure as to the truthfulness and sincerity, because I represent constituent people as a high-ranking politician, and I belong to these people, irrespective of the history. But in order for Bosnia and Herzegovina to be accepted and understandable, must abide by the rules. Ambassador Alcalay is my subordinate. He's not allowed to act, and Mr. Insko will agree, he may not act on an international stage without the approval of the presidency. He does not have my approval for today's address, and he did not represent Bosnia and Herzegovina, but himself or whoever he consulted in the meantime when he was muted. And what is this attack? What do you consider an attack? My insisting on the rights I have, because the Constitution stipulates that it is the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina that is responsible for foreign policy. Mr. Alcalay has breached and violated the Constitution and law today, but he won't be punished or sanctioned because the court is under the governance of foreigners, foreign embassies, the OHR and Bosniaks. And that's why there is never a decision for the breaches committed by them, and we are there to be humiliated. Mr. Insko is trying to secure the support of the EU and other countries to punish Milorad Dodik, that is me, myself, the presiding member of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, for the alleged glorification of war crimes. He is asking me to remove the plaque from a dormitory in Pale, which is an important municipality in Republika Srpska, and thus prove that I do not glorify war crimes. I invite him to set the time and date and come in person to the site and watch and remove the plaque together with me. But is it a solution? Do you think that will actually achieve here? Do you think that will change what the people think? Because the plaque for Radovan Karadzic was put before the final and binding decision for war crimes. But since Mr. Insko is quite uncomfortable here, I think this is a fair offer. So whenever he wants to come, he needs to give me half a day. I'll get there and we'll do it. Me, myself, and himself together, or me, myself. But he needs to witness it. He needs to see that it's been done. Me, I'm from a family who's always been anti-fascist, who participated in the Second World War on the positive side. I do not impute that I support war crimes. I have never supported war crimes. Everything else is in the domain of speculations. And it seems to me that you're trying to eliminate certain people to ensure the processes that you have failed to ensure for the past 25 years. Hence, that's why Bosnia and Herzegovina requires our solutions and your support, and not your solutions and our obedience. Excuse me, if you can, for the feeling that you may have, because I was allegedly rough. I wanted to share all the facts with you. It would be disastrous for the democratic capacities of the United Nations if your countries continue to brutally eliminate people, as has been the case over the past 35 years, for something that I have said or Mr. Chirac has said. So I do not undermine Dayton-based Bosnia and Herzegovina, but anti-Dayton Bosnia and Herzegovina will never be accepted because my people will not accept it. On all other principles, we understand each other and we understand each other. We do not accept the membership in the NATO. On 2 occasions, NATO air-raided Serbs without a resolution of your body. Those were actions in which many innocent civilians, including many children, died. And the people who has been through that has no reason or will to support the NATO. On the other hand, we understand the power of the NATO. And it's not a problem for us to cooperate, but the problem that Bosnia and Herzegovina has with the NATO is as follows. The document, the agreement with the NATO does not prejudice the membership, and that's and to please, if you'll please respect this position. Thank you. I'd like to thank you all, the ambassador. I trust that some of you did not want to hear me, but you have. I'd like to thank the public and the audience who have been with us. I want to see just long-lasting and sustainable peace for all peoples here in the region. That's the only justice for all. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Dodik. I think it's time to start wrapping up this meeting, this session. I would like, of course, to thank all the participants. I believe that the meeting, however divergent sometimes, but it was useful because it allowed to look at the situation from a possibly new angle, the one that we did not approach in the Security Council meeting on that particular issue. What this meeting revealed, perhaps a bit paradoxically, the support of all who spoke here for the Dayton agreements, and it just showed that there is no viable alternative to it. And in that sense, these Dayton agreements should be implemented in full and faithfully. Although we saw clearly divergence on how this agreement is being implemented. As for Russia, we would like to see Bosnia and Herzegovina as a prosperous, independent, and sovereign state whose peoples determine their fate of their own without foreign interference, and us, the international community, are obliged to help them do so. I thank you very much for participating. I thank our briefers, I thank the participants, and I thank you for your time, and goodbye.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you.